Hey folks, welcome to not just another episode of the Collab or Die podcast, but one where I hope everyone can gather to honor the memory of my very dear friend and late guest, Wade Walters. I had the great fortune of having Wade come to the studio to film this episode of the podcast after his all-too-sudden cancer diagnosis late last year. It was my greatest hope that this episode would be released at a time when he'd be able to enjoy it with his friends and family and soak up the experience that he himself proclaimed repeatedly to his son on the way back home was one of the coolest things he had done in a long time. But sadly, on January 28th of this year, 2023, Wade passed away. Wade was more than just a great guest I couldn't wait to have on my podcast. He was a real renegade of love. Beyond just his time in the Army and the police force, he continued to dedicate his life to serving others dutifully and often to the detriment of himself. His passion for life, his unique Red Forman-esque way of showing kindness, and his boundless generosity touched the hearts of so many people in our community. He was truly a one-of-a-kind character and a real class act. Wade was truly a beautiful and unique individual, loved by his closest friends, his family, and all of us here at Collab or Die. He left an indelible mark on the world, and through touring and performing with his son Nick Walters, who might as well just actually be my brother, meeting him left an indelible mark on me. His memory will live on through the countless lives he touched, and I am forever grateful to be counted amongst them. So, as you're listening, even if you've never met him, take the time to truly see Wade and all that he brought to our lives. It is my hope that if this episode is played back, it'll be done through the lens of celebrating his life, his legacy, and continuing to spread love, to be kind, and to keep his memory alive through our own acts of service and collaboration. Rest in peace, Mr. Walters. Oink oink, I'm a pig. You will be deeply missed, but never forgotten. Enjoy the episode.
We're always collaborating at all times with the universe.
Do you have to go to the bathroom or anything? I forgot to ask you before we get started.
Pretty much taken care of.
Okay.
And you're going to have to give me leeway because, you know, everybody is nice to people who have cancer.
Right, naturally.
And now,
you can't...
except 3 years later when they go, the son of the bitches didn't die.
Well, I mean, that's the scenario we're always hoping for. I'm trying to think of the last text message that you sent me. I'm going to look it up because it was funny. Like, it's very Wade Walters. Like, if I had to walk it through and say, who did this text message come from, it would easily, just reading it, I could tell it was you. You messaged me at like 10 a.m. and we're like, hey, why won't you talk to me, buddy? And I didn't realize I just wasn't talking to you. I wasn't like an active decision. And I was down in the Lewistown area that day going to the magistrate's office.
Right.
And you're like, maybe you can stop by. I say hi to Jack. I was like, to Jack? Do I know Jack? And now in hindsight, I realize what that was. It was Mr. Daniels, if you will. And I was busy, so I couldn't. But I said when I came back over, I'd make time we'd hang out. And you were looking forward to it. And you said, by the way, I'm like the Rolling Stones. You don't know. You don't know when the end is coming, so get your ticket to the See the Wade Before He Is Dead tour.
There we go.
And I was like, okay. I was like, oh, I'm getting VIP passes. You're like, love to have you backstage. And, you know, I mean, like, that's pretty quintessential Wade Walters.
Stupid.
No, I mean, I think that's actually a form of resiliency, right? Like, humor is like the easiest way to kind of process.
Oh, yeah, I believe in that. Yeah, humor is it's a way to hide my true self from people.
Right.
And at the same time, just make them smile.
Yeah.
Kind of neat.
I'm lucky enough that all the people in my life that I think have taught me humor, you included, yours is a very dry sense of humor. Like, if people don't know you, they're very inclined to take everything you say verbatim. And it's because you have this, like, kind of lumbering, authoritative kind of, like, you just feel like that's the police officer.
I can lie to people if I start with one little grain of truth. If you get them with the grain of truth that they understand, after they just go along with it. And they go, yeah, it must be true. And I go, and I hate, I mean, I like to do it because I enjoy fooling them, but I always make sure to tell them I just made all that up.
Right. You disclose by the end of them.
Yeah.
My grandfather, my pap, he's a lot of the same way. Very, like, he can keep his stone face and just tell the story and be like, yeah. And he'll have people, like, he likes to make people, like, double look at him, like, did he just say that, or is that real? Like, does he mean that? And so I observed him from, like, a young age messing with people as a kid and just was like, okay, all right, this is actually really funny because it kind of makes people accept vulnerability without realizing they're doing it. I mean, you kind of point out how gullible somebody is, but you're doing it in a playful way where it's more like poking at their weakness in a way that, I think is beneficial to people. People can benefit from that and being like, okay, all right, I need to not be.
Probably by the time I'm done with people, they probably distrust everything everybody tells them the rest of their lives.
Yeah, especially about you, right? They're like, oh, have you heard about?
I don't care.
I remember, I'm thinking about the time that I got my Ducati and I rode it over the mountain and I dropped it off to you and you were like, can I take that for a ride? And I was like, yeah, okay. And I gave it. I don't think I had no sooner given you the keys. I don't know if you put a helmet on.
Oh yeah, I always wear.
You did? Okay, good. And you took off and were real like normal going through the neighborhood. And then I could hear the pipes in my Ducati screaming on the highway, like easily half a mile away.
Yeah.
And Nick, I was like, that can't possibly be your dad right now, right? And he was like, oh, yeah, you definitely shouldn't have given him the keys to that bike. And I was like, oh, all right, great.
I got up in the 4-lane and I had it up to 125 and went, you're an old man. What do you think you're doing? And I just...
Exactly what I got.
I just want to go fast.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I also think of one of my other really favorite memories with you is having, I think it was like sauerkraut, pork and sauerkraut at your place in the New Year and being like, man, this is really good. Like what's the trick? And you're like, the trick is you got to get an extra can or two of sauerkraut juice and you have to get it early because it's always sold out whenever you're trying to find it at that time of the season. So you're like, you put that in because otherwise as it's boiling, it just kind of boils up a lot of the juice and then it's gone. And so I have like kept that with me forever. So when every year I don't make it because sometimes my mom will make it or family members will. But whenever I do, I always go and I usually have 2 cans of kraut juice year round because whenever I see it, it could be the middle of May and I'm like, oh, I should grab these now just to make sure I don't need these later.
I actually had an assistant manager at the grocery store who knew me from back when I was working in police work. And I asked him about it and he said, let me order some in. He ordered 6 cans. Now, they weren't for me, but I only needed 2, so I got them off the shelf when I seen them, and it was like 2 months later, there's 4 more. I went, pretty much obligated now. They never restocked after that, and I went.
Well, it took me hunting for it. Like, I don't think Walmart had it, for example. Like, I had to go to Wegmans, I think, to get it, because it's sort of like a... If you know anything about cooking and you like to cook specifically sauerkraut, usually you know when and where that's kind of required for the recipe. So of these things that you have given me in my life that were, blessings of knowledge, that is definitely one of them.
Okay, I have a sauerkraut juice knowledge. You're probably not going to use that much the rest of your life.
At least once every 2 to 3 years on my own, with a crock pot. And really, it's every time. Like if I know where the aisle is.
Well, yep. It makes you think of me.
Always. Yeah, I have plenty of reasons to think about you.
Here's the reason I do this. We're weird country.
Yeah. Weird country, whoever's listening. So, I got to be honest. Nick told me about your cancer diagnosis, and a lot of things go through my head. But the first thing I thought of was, like, I know a lot of people. And I don't know if some people have the mental fortitude to kind of be, as tenacious as they need to be to battle cancer. Because they say like cancer, I don't know, but I've known people who have had cancer that it's got to be one of the toughest battles you can go through. And it takes a certain kind of resolve. And my first thought when I thought about you having it was like, well, if cancer has ever met its match, this is going to be the guy who gives it a run for his money.
So far, I feel so blessed because it's been so easy. I've got like a ton of chemo side effects, but nothing that has kept me down. And I've tried to keep a positive attitude. And I really believe my faith that God's just saying, here's the road I'm taking you. But guess what? I'm not taking you to the end. I'm going to get to the point where you go, yeah, thank you, God. I don't want to die. I want to get this taken care of.
Do you feel like, so obviously I'm in Relic Hearts with your son, and we've been doing music. He's basically the one who convinced me to start down the path of doing music, forever and 17 years ago. And, do you think that you've instilled all the knowledge you need to into him to to help him persevere and have that same kind of tenacity going forward? Because I feel like Nick and I have lived together and seen some of each of our lowest lows.
I'm a dad who goes, I didn't do a good job. I think there's a lot of dads that do that. I hope, here's what I hope. Here's what I've always hoped. He sees all the good qualities and forgets all the bad ones.
Oh, yeah.
Because, there were days that he got yelled at, and I'm sure he's got plenty of good stories to tell me, like his oink, oink, I'm a pig story, which he told in church.
Oh, yeah. I specifically have him tell that story to people.
Yeah.
All the time. And that's hilarious.
That thing is kind of embarrassing now, but at the time I thought.
It seems like something out of like a proper Hallmark movie remake of The Christmas Story.
Well, it's like, who would do this? So, some scriptwriter wrote this, and I'm going, geez. So, but like I said, you hope he picks up the best quality. But you got to remember, he had a mom too, and she instilled some values in them kids because, I wasn't always there. So she had a big part in this.
Well, he is one of the nicest human beings I have ever met in my life, and that's easily why I am happy to quickly call him my best friend.
And he amazes me because I think of him as the child that just never grew up.
Yeah, he's the forever child for sure.
He's laid back and nothing's going to bother him. But when poop hits the fan, he knows exactly what to do, and he's not afraid to do it.
Yeah, he can rise to any occasion.
Yeah, it's kind of neat when he does that, and I go, yeah, he's a good kid.
So what kind of, I guess my question to you is you are probably one of the most introspective people I know that maybe isn't outward about all the information that they think about and all the things that they think about. Oh. But I know that you're the kind of person who's like a think tank. Like your gears are always going. You're always contemplating things and reverse engineering and being thoughtful about things and mindful. What do you feel? I want to know how has your perspective shifted since your cancer diagnosis? I feel like I want to know what kind of things have come to your mind that have been like the most pressing things for you to think about.
Most pressing at the beginning was end of life issues, so that there was no burden on the family, and I didn't have any problem working on that either. Like I got to arrange my funeral and stuff like that.
Is that surreal?
They say the best time to start planning for the end was yesterday. And I think they're right. You don't do it, you don't do it. But all of a sudden, it was on me. What I didn't know at the time is I had my first visit with my oncologist on October 27th. And that's when he confirmed for sure, because I thought it was cancer, but I couldn't read the medical things, like doctors and stuff.
Right.
But he went, yeah, you got cancer. And okay. And then he said, we're going to start treatment and this stuff. And just out of the blue, I said, should I start looking at end-of-life issues? And he said, I would. And that was it. I mean, he didn't press me on it or anything. So he immediately had me start radiation treatment because I had a tumor that was pressing down on a vein in my heart. So they wanted to get rid of that. And then 2-3 days later, he started all the chemo and everything. So I'm doing everything together.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how intense that was, that they were just doing it all together like that. And then I met with him again like 3 weeks later, and he started looking, and he says, I can see that the tumors are going down and everything. And he said, you first walked in here, I gave you a week.
That's what he said to you then?
Yeah, yes.
How many weeks after was it that he said that?
It was like 3 weeks after my first visit.
So 2 weeks after
so
you
I figured it out. I should have expired on November the 10th, 2022. And here we are in December. And it's not even been a month, but I feel terrific. I haven't gone through the, wasting away and everything. So I think I'm doing real good.
we're kind of like, we're all on borrowed time. Like we never really know when it comes. And so I feel like you have a pragmatic approach to everything in life. I think you're very practical as a personality trait to a T.
But you know something, it still scared me because what if the treatment just decides to start going, okay, nothing more, and the cancer wins? So there's nothing I can do about that. But so far, it's been good.
Have there been any shifts in your diet? And
I've been no, actually, the food no appetite is good, but I started to prepare for this.
Yeah,
because I went, okay, everybody says they lose their appetite and they get skinny and everything, so I started eating every snack food I could find. I'm just gonna pack this whole in,
getting it in.
Yeah, and so I'm like overweight now, but it all went to my belly. Everything else, it's like skin and bone. You would think I was coming out of a concentration camp, but my stomach looks really good. so I did that, and then I found out I'm not that bad. But then in my second chemo treatment, about 3 days in, my taste buds rebelled, and everything tasted terrible. Everything. Really? So that it would, and then I found out this is basically at the back of my tongue. So if I tried to chew up front, I might be okay. But when I swallowed, it had to pass the back. And it was like, God, I can't eat anymore. I forced myself to eat every meal because I went, you have to keep it up.
Right.
And
I mean, you need the energy, you need the nutrients, you need the replenishment.
And now I'm probably at 90% back to being able to taste stuff.
Okay.
The only other thing is I can't really eat snack food anymore because sugar in some food is so intense, it's sickening. I don't know if you ever had anything that was so sickening and sweet.
Most things.
You couldn't take another bite, and that's what this stuff is. Cookies, which I love chocolate chip cookies, but it's like, no, I can't eat it.
It's like too decadent.
Oh my God, yes, it's terrible. So I had to stop eating the snack food again.
So outside of the chemo and the radiation, what have you been doing to sort of like occupy your time? Like what has been like your focus in your day to day that you're able to, you know?
Just about everything that comes up. Like you said, that I think about things, and I think it was like a learning disability that my mind just goes somewhere else. Like I was telling somebody today, when I was in school, I'd read an assignment, and it might be something about the Niagara Falls or something. So I'm reading paragraph after paragraph, and I go, I wonder if there's any other higher, waterfalls in the United States. And I go, and my mind would just wander, and 3 paragraphs later I'd go, shit. I have no idea what I just read.
Right, so I've been reading for 5 minutes.
I'd have to keep going back. So my mind is always going somewhere else.
Yeah.
So if I have a thought about something, especially now about the chemo, because yesterday I was thinking, my eyes, there's just something I can't seem to focus on. And then I looked it up. Chemo, side effect, can cause very blurry vision.
Oh, I can imagine you're going down rabbit holes right now.
I'm going, son of a gun. So this is the problem. Like I said, there's just so many side effects, but none of them so bad that I go, okay, I'm ready to give up.
Do you feel like you've gone into like hyper research mode on like, I mean, you were kind of a very analytical person too.
On that, because I've looked up some of my medicine that I'm on to see side effects from that stuff. And I mean, I'm just interested in that. Every time I do a blood test or something, I have an app that I can go in and they show the results and everything. So then I'm Googling. I go right to Dr. Google, which I'm not sure you can trust. But I look up, okay,
better than your neighbor probably.
What's a THC blood test? And so I look it up and see what it is. And I try to figure out, well, why'd they give me that test? And
to see if you had any THC in your system?
No, but I just used those initials for an example.
Okay, right. I was hoping you were alluding to the fact that you maybe have started down the THC.
No, they have all these different tests and doctors understand them right away.
Yeah,
but they let me see them, and I don't understand them.
Hieroglyphics. It might as well be.
So I do Dr. Google and I see what's going on because I'm interested and I want to be proactive. Because if I'm not going to be proactive in trying to do this, It just seems to me it's like I'm waiting for something bad to happen.
Right.
So, and that I don't know why. It's like going back to work. That was a major step for me, even though it's not hard work. But my legs are like I have neuropathy now because of the chemo.
Okay.
So my nerves from my knees down don't really talk to me well.
Really?
So it makes it kind of hard for me to walk around. Well, which is the reason I told you that I had to crab crawl up steps like a toddler because my legs just wouldn't work.
Do you have to? Are you able to make it up your steps at your place now, or have you been staying downstairs?
2 weeks ago, I was able to start just going up the steps because I had to. I didn't have a choice.
Right.
And I went because I hurt my arm, and I couldn't put any weight on the arm to crab crawl.
How did that happen?
Stupid. No, really. I have a Mr. Coffee. By the way, Mr. Coffee, you can send your check for this endorsement.
Yeah. And also the pain and suffering, apparently.
Yeah, it's just a 5 cup coffee pot, and I had it in a dish drainer to dry, and I picked it out, turned it over, and my elbow popped on the inside. I mean, it cracked, and I went, "Holy moly, what was that?" And it hurt. So I started to do the ice thing and all that, and it felt like it was getting better. And then just yesterday, I couldn't lift it. I couldn't do anything with it. And I went, "What happened?" And it just hurt to move it. And I'm going, and chemo it's hard for things to heal.
I imagine it's difficult on your bones too.
I don't know. I had a couple cuts on my arm that are just surface. It was like one of them was my first chemo. And when they took the tape off from the IV, the tape pulled the top layer of skin off.
Oh, my God.
And it hasn't healed yet. And I'm going, oh, my gosh. So I got to play around with that stuff. Chemo it is what it is.
Well, you seem like you're handling it pretty well. I mean, like, as far as faculties go, you were Wade Walters ever if I've ever seen him.
Let me put it this way, Johnny. What choice do I have?
Yeah, but some people don't look at it like that.
You can either deal with it, or you can just say, "Oh, this is terrible, and I want to die." I'm not dying. I don't want to. I've always felt that I was going to live till I'm 84. So 67 is not 84, no matter how you slice it.
You're right.
So I'm going to try to do the best I can. I've had a lot of people pray for me. I believe it's working. I believe in God's miracles. I just believe it in probably a different way than most people. I don't think I'm ever going to wake up in the morning and all the tumors are gone and I'm healed just like that. I do believe this, that we call it the body of Christ, and that's all believers. Or it becomes the body of Christ. And God has given people such amazing gifts, like the people who do research, the doctors who are, making the choices for me, even the people that are putting those IVs in. They all have been given a gift. And even the people that are out there that are on the farm, that are picking all the food and stuff that I get to eat that keep me nourished. And that's the body of Christ. And through all of them, I believe there's going to be a miracle that I'm going to be okay.
Well, I certainly believe so, too. I think if anybody has the wherewithal to withstand anything thrown at them, it's you. Well, despite it not maybe being an easy battle, I think that some people are less mentally equipped than others to be able to handle
We'll see. And, sometimes I feel guilty because the people have been so generous, and I think I might have an obligation to die just so they can say, we helped him out.
I felt bad for him. That was what I needed to do.
It scares me that if this goes into remission and I'm fine for, another 10, 15 years, that I'm going to forget the blessing. And I'm going to go back to being a butthole to people. I've tried to get away from doing that. I don't know when this happened, but it was in the last 6 months. When I was in law enforcement, there were, some people that I just couldn't stand. I hated them because they were just bad people. And then I would do morning meditations here, and I've seen them where I work, and I would just ignore them. I wouldn't talk to them. I wouldn't do anything. And one day I just got like this message from God that, hey, I'm talking to you. These people you need to talk to. You can't treat them this way anymore. So the next time they came in, I went, okay, God, if that's what you want. I started talking to them like, you guys are okay.
Yeah, I think like it's hard to want to be the example when you can observe in a certain subset of people or type or any person individually that they're maybe like kind of a piece of shit.
Well, one of them I investigated for being a child molester.
So that's the caliber of person we're talking about.
Yeah, and I don't believe I ever had enough evidence to prosecute him. I don't remember the whole case, but I do know I believe the kids and the stories they told me.
Right.
They were very believable, but I just couldn't make a case to get into court. But from that time on, I just hated the guy. Can't stand him.
Right. Hard to kind of wash the taste of that out of your mouth whenever you think you're on the hunch about something.
I've had a pretty rough 3 years. This year was my worst year as far as health, but if I feel like if God tells me to do it, I do it.
Well, I think it's also kind of interesting to think that, like, that's a pretty extreme. I think a lot of people have very, very strong opinions on, obviously child molestation and that in general.
I get it.
So, like, for you to be able to see a place in your life where you're like, these are still, people that need help or that need.
And in law enforcement, it probably was the thing I'm the most proud of, the work I did, because we had a small department and they asked, or they didn't ask me, they said, we want you to do every case. If it comes in, it's not on your shift or anything, you get them all. So they send me away to school. And I always remember this story. They actually, it was given by the Postal Service, because they used to do, because of all the mail that went through there, these guys were the expert in child porn and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I imagine that was like, there wasn't the internet, right? So like
exactly.
That's the avenue for it.
So they're the ones that were given this course, and part of their course was they actually had a tape of a child being sexually molested that we had to watch. And there you go. You see that big, they said, if you can't watch this, don't do this job. You can't do it, because your job is not to get disgusted by these people, because if you do, it's not going to help you investigate. Right. You need to try to make these people feel, if you're interviewing them, like you understand them.
Yeah, even if at your core, you never are going to.
Exactly. But you got to be able to do that pretending thing. So if you can't watch this and go, okay, I'm remaining calm in this, and it's okay, then you can do this, And it's, truly the only way you're going to be of service and help other kids in this situation. Like, you have to do this very unthinkable, difficult thing. It was kind of a difficult way to learn. Can you do this or not?
Yeah, that's a trial by fire situation, I would imagine.
It was. But it turned out that, like I said, I liked doing it because you could get convictions. And probably my best one was a 5-month-old kid who had 19 broken bones. Of course,
wait.
Babies are easy to break their bones.
Can I get a top 3 convictions that you got through that you're like the most proud of that you can think of?
This one I know is the most. That was the best one with the young kid, because there's no witness. So you really have to go in and do investigations in it. And at the same time, the local youth services caseworker was working on the case too. And I interviewed all kinds of people, and it was amazing. And I know this guy did it. How do I get the conviction? Right, that was it. And the caseworker said that it was the mother and grandmother and the father who were all doing it. And I went, Mom and Grandma, they had nothing to do with this. I know this from all the interviews. So they took the kid away from him, and they wouldn't let Mom and Grandma have him back. The caseworker which I went, this isn't right. But anyhow, finally this kid, well, the dad got arrested. I think he's pretty young, 19 or something, 20, something like this. He got arrested for something else and he went to jail. And I went to interview him. And I finally convinced him by telling him, I understand you didn't want to hurt your baby. And I got a confession. So I went, this is how it works. You just got to keep going and going and going. But the end of that came is even though I got a confession, the caseworker still wouldn't give the baby back to mom and grandma. And I went, this is stupid. So they actually had to appeal to the top of the state agency. And then I went and testified for them and told them about my entire investigation.
I mean, that's the thing it's going to take if it's going to get appealed.
They got the kid back right away.
Good for them.
They went, and I went, see, caseworker, you didn't work on this. You really didn't.
Right. It seems like they maybe had an opinion and then they just kind of
Yeah.
I mean, from their perspective, you probably have so many through that I could see the part that they're focusing on is just getting the kid to safety no matter what. And then barring any opportunity for it to be a backslid into.
But the way the agency is set up, at least in Pennsylvania, is we want to unite the child with the parent. That's our goal. It's not to keep the parent away from the kid. It's to ensure that the kid's going to be safe. Well, I'm going, listen, they didn't do anything. I look at the investigation. You know?
And you can spell it out.
Yeah. But she didn't want to do that. So, okay.
I got a tape from Nick a little while ago of, I believe, it's 60 Minutes interview and to convert to digital. So I have the tape and I have to convert it over to digital so that we have like a digital record of it before the VHS tape, magnetically starts to expire. America's Most Wanted. Oh, yeah,
He has that tape.
Yeah, I have that tape. I'm in the process of converting it over to digital right now, so we have like a digital copy of it.
I guess that's another one. Here's a stupid one now that I really enjoyed. We held an elderly woman who lived alone, and she was getting harassing phone calls. So this is back in the old days, so I get a hold of the phone company, and they traced the calls to, they had two different public phones in about a mile from where she lived.
Okay, so close.
So he was making these calls from, and she was afraid he was going to come over. And we're going, how do we know when he calls? If we find a way to get her, to get in touch with us when he calls, but it didn't work that way. You just couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So what we did is we got together. I had another guy on the department who knew just enough about electronics that we ran a buzzer to her neighbor across there's only about 30 feet between houses and stuff, but we wired something up there and we said, hey, when you get these calls, press the button, it'll buzz over there and your neighbor has agreed to call the police.
Okay.
So you go, okay, this is pretty old-fashioned.
Gets the job done.
Wait a minute. Got the guy the first call. First call.
You're
and
like, all right.
He was in another jurisdiction, but we had already told these people, if we, that department, if you get this call, it's going to be one of two places.
Yeah.
So they went, and he's on the phone. And that was the end of it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I thought, too.
So I haven't gotten to watch the footage yet. What was the America's Most Wanted thing for?
A homicide. And, again, we are a small department. And so for us, a homicide's a big deal.
What does small department mean?
We had 7 guys.
Wow. So it's like super small.
Oh, well, and Pennsylvania has a multitude
of really
small departments.
My dad lives in Saxton, Pennsylvania. I would imagine if they have a police department at all, it has got to be 1 or 2 people.
Right. And if, now there's a regional department and, when we had like 15 or 16 men, that's not a small department anymore in Pennsylvania. And now you're seeing even bigger ones in counties like York and stuff where they have a lot more crime. Yeah. And they're getting to have some big numbers. And it's just a lot of municipalities go together to help save some money.
Yeah.
So, and, I think they work out pretty good.
So your department, 7 people.
Yeah, at that time. And I'm trying to think, old person. And I get the excuse that I think it's the cancer. I forget what we were talking about.
America's Most Wanted.
Yes. Okay. So we get this homicide. I'm at home, day off. They call everybody in, the whole department. because they got all kinds of things to do.
Right.
So show up at the homicide, talking to my boss, and we went, we need to interview the wife. We're going to take her, to the station to interview her. And so we take her there, but before we left the scene, the coroner had gathered up some of her effects and gave us her pocketbook. So we're interviewing, and we ask her if she would empty out her pocketbook. She does, and she has the firing mechanism for a rifle in there. And we went, "What's this?" And she went, "I don't know. Oh, no, not me," because she had said that somebody broke in and shot her husband.
Okay.
And so, and that's what we're going with. But, I guess the criminal probably, I don't know why he would hide stuff in her purse. So we got a little suspicious.
Certainly.
So we didn't arrest her at that point because we really didn't have enough. So we're continuing our investigation. Now, I love doing searches. It was one of my favorite things to do because we're playing hide and seek, and guess what? You can't hide it from me.
Were you ever a detective?
No, I was gonna be, but some things happened in the new department, and I went, "I'm not playing your stupid game."
Oh, okay.
But I
feel like you were naturally inclined to be a good detective.
When we were going to do, because of the work I did with the kids and stuff, when they were going to form a new police department that was going to be a regional department, I spoke with the chief that was going to be there because he knew about me doing these cases and stuff, and he said, "You're our next detective." It was a done deal.
A no-brainer.
And in fact, they assigned a badge number to me that was a detective badge number before we were even the regional department, which is still tattooed on me and Nick and my other son.
All Zane.
Yeah, they all love me being in police work so much that we all got my badge number tattooed.
Good.
Well, I'm proud of my kids for that one, too. But so that's the detective story that, when we got there to regional, then they said, "Oh, here's what we have to do. We're going to give each person, who was interested, 2 months to work as a detective, and then we're going to give it to you." And I went, "I'm not playing games. I'm not doing this. Sorry."
You either want me on that right away or not.
Exactly.
Or expand that unit if you want.
So sorry about your luck. I'm not even interested in doing the 2 months now.
Right.
So, yeah.
That sounds like a real loss to the actual department in that case.
It may not have been. Who knows?
I don't know. I think you got
I might have been okay with the whole stupid kid thing, but then, not be able to solve anything else.
Maybe your track record just looked good because you didn't go that route.
Exactly.
So, so you find this firing mechanism in her purse.
So back to that one, we let her loose. But the best part of that case was the next day, I'm going back and searching. The day that it happened, I'm searching their son's room. He has a waterbed.
Okay.
And I had a waterbed, so I know if you try to make a waterbed, you don't just tuck it in. You have to really pull up on the corners and
right.
stuff, because there's a lot of weight to that thing. So I look at the waterbed, I pull it up, and I find the guy's wallet and a couple other things, his personal items. Well, if this is a robbery or a theft and a murder, why? And the kid was supposedly in his bed.
So why is it hidden underneath there?
Exactly. How did
this guy go missing?
There? No, he was laying in his bed. He was asleep for the rest of the day.
Yeah, fair enough.
After he got shot with a rifle, that was it. So we went, come on, this is not adding up. Somebody didn't break in and kill him, rob him, and then hide this stuff in the waterbed,
right?
While the kid's still sleeping.
Yeah.
So next day, they have an attic on both sides. It's a peaked roof. And so each side of the bedroom, the kid's bedroom, which would have been in what most people would call an attic, each side of that, when they squared it off, was storage area.
Okay.
So, and it was filled. This woman was neat. She was the neatest thing in the world. So, but it was filled with boxes and stuff where she'd put everything away on these sides. Well, this happened in the summer, and it was hot up there. But I was the one who got to do the search and went, we need to take all this stuff out of here.
Yeah.
So I started moving everything out and everything, and it has blown-in insulation. I'm going, I can't get into all this to look.
Right.
So I came up with this idea. I went, metal detector. Because I was thinking, we're looking for the rifle.
Right. So if it's a thing of Tupperware, we don't need to open this box.
So, and we had a good guy that, he's a local fire chief, but he's a really nice guy. And he goes, I have one. I went, go get it. So I'm going back to this whole thing between all the rafters and everything. And I'm going, beep, beep, beep on nails. Then all of a sudden it goes, beep. And I went, what's here? I reached down into the insulation, grab on, pull up the rifle, and went, hey, somebody get some cameras. We need to get pictures.
Yeah.
So now we had the rifle, and we're going, there is no way somebody that's just came off the street.
Right.
And killed this guy.
Hid his rifle.
Took all the boxes out of the kid's room, hid the rifle in there, and put all the boxes back. So that was, to me, that was interesting that I was able to come up with the rifle.
Yeah.
And that's just like, we got this one.
But that's like a very common sense approach to being like, okay, I'm going to have to do my due diligence. I'm going to have to search the property.
Like I said, I just loved doing searches. I would think of, and when I did search warrants, one of the things they taught us is if you're going to do a search warrant and try to describe the smallest thing you can think of that might be for your case.
Okay.
And that way, you can go everywhere.
Because it's little, and I got to look for this little thing in these places. Huh.
So, and that's what we try to do. And in this case, I mean, I'm not sure what we actually asked for in that search warrant because it wasn't my case. I just know that they told me, we get to search, and then here's what we're searching for. And I go, good enough for me.
Right.
And then I just go crazy. I don't know why I was like that, but I enjoyed it.
So is that why you feel like that's the kind of stuff that made you want to kind of continue working in law enforcement even after like retiring?
No, I think the thing I love most about law enforcement, especially after retiring, is they say people who go into combat are really close. And I've always said that I agree with that because somebody's got your back and everything. But I think law enforcement is really, really close to that. And I think I like that the most.
The camaraderie.
Actually, we're terrible to each other. We were. I mean, it was common. I don't know if they do this, guys who are in combat and stuff or anything. But for us, it was like your police work. If you can, if you get one of your guys down, not shot or anything, but if you catch him doing something stupid, you make fun of him for a while. You just kick him while he's down.
Right.
You never let him forget this stuff. So, we'd be hard on each other, but we all did it. And we all went, okay, it's my turn. But, but
time to take my lump.
I had a couple guys that I worked with that I didn't like. I just didn't like them, our personalities or anything. The thing I did like, though, is if I was going into a building to do a search because, the door had been kicked in or whatever like that, I also never had to worry about that exact same guy backing me up. So if he was coming in, and same thing in a fight or a bar fight or something. I don't have to worry. Is the guy I don't like, is he doing anything? I knew he was doing it,
right?
Which is kind of really neat, to think. Guys got my back. And when somebody got your back after a while, it's like, yeah, this is neat. And I miss it because I don't know. I talked to a guy one day after I retired from my department, and we just happened to see each other, and he said, I've been thinking about, getting out of police work. And I went, you'll never find anything else as good, ever, about feeling you're doing something out there and you're doing something for yourself. And now he's chief of the department.
So he stayed in?
Oh, yeah, he stayed.
That's good.
I'm glad he did. He's a really good guy, good cop.
Somebody you want to have in that position.
Yeah.
That's good.
So Yeah, I love police work. I got into it for all the wrong reasons.
What were the wrong reasons you got into it for?
I can remember that I was about 16 and my dad and I were going somewhere. And I can actually remember the road. And he said, he looked at me and I don't know why. He said, I've always wanted a son that was a policeman. And my two other brothers, which, one of them was already in the military, so he made his career choices. And the other one had made plans to be an air traffic controller. And I went, well, that leaves me. And
That's me then.
And that was it. And that's a stupid reason, but that's what I did. In fact, when I went to go join the military, I took their battery of tests and everything, and they said, you can do anything you want. And I went, I'd like to be a helicopter pilot, because that was one of my dreams, was to fly a helicopter. And he said, can't do that when, unfortunately, that school is closed, because this was just after Vietnam, and they had so many pilots. They didn't know what to do with them all. So I went, well, how about military police? And he looked at me and said, how about military intelligence? And I went, no, military police is okay. And I often wonder what would the career path have been if it would have been military intelligence?
Probably a pretty prestigious career, I would imagine.
Whole different direction. But I always like to say this because both my brothers were in the military for 20 years, and my oldest brother is a big one on veterans and stuff. And I went, you have veterans that serve their country, and then there's veterans who have been served by your country. I was served by my country. I got a job in the military when there were no jobs on the outside. They gave me the training for police work. And then when I was, when I went back to civilian life and took the test, at that time they went, he was military police. Yeah, we need this guy.
Right. Yeah, it's almost a given.
So the first job I applied for, I got hired. And that's unusual because everybody in the world wants to be a cop. Being able to actually do it and wanting to do it is two different things.
Yeah.
And I used to tell other guys, I said, something, you leave here, there's 10 guys ready to take your place right now.
Right.
Without no question. So don't think that you can, they're going to call you and say, oh, please come back. They don't need you.
I think some of my favorite conversations with you just over the years have been like, obviously, I'm a pretty liberal and progressive guy, and you're a very conservative person.
I know that, and I don't know how we get along. I haven't figured it out.
Because we do the thing that America as a whole needs to do. We can coalesce on our own personal differences and say, hey, there's more common ground here than there is different ground.
I really believe that because, even we might have our differences. Sometimes I don't think we have our differences. I think we think the same about stuff. It's just how to get
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
You're probably, and this would have been after I was out of college because I didn't really start pursuing music until after college. But, with Nick being in the band with me, I was like, well, this is his dad. Like, obviously, I'm going to respect you no matter what. But I appreciate that you didn't mind the pushback I gave you on, like, my opinions and thoughts on things. And then you would challenge me to see how that would stack up against situations that would really kind of critically damage my, thought, perspective or, like, viewpoint.
The truth is I felt sorry for you because you were wrong so often.
Right. Well, you were so sweet to treat me so kindly for being so wrong. But in those conversations, I really, aside from getting a fire sauerkraut and pork recipe out of you, I got really good conversations with somebody who was willing to challenge my belief systems in ways that most people can't because they have the thought, but they don't have sort of the credence to back it up with where that comes from. It's like they regurgitate a point that they heard somewhere, but they don't have their own real opinions on it, and they haven't certainly formulated articulate ones around it. And you always did.
Unfortunately, I have opinions about a lot of things, but
they're usually not opinions that you came to without some sincere consideration. And it took me seeing that you were not just regurgitating whatever Fox News was telling you. You were like, well, okay, but let's look at how this breaks down. And you would actually have these like really intricate conversations with me. And I was like, oh yeah, shit. Like I always went home after our conversations and I'd be like, yeah, damn, I did not think of it like that. But I do agree with what you say in that regard. And so like you said, we would see a lot of times it's not that we disagreed with each other. We just disagreed with how we were going to get about getting to the same place that we both wanted to be.
I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't want to help people who need help. Well, there are probably a bunch of crazies that go, tough luck for you.
Right.
I believe there's people out there that need help with things. It's how we approach it. And I hate the government who just throws money at it.
Right, like that's going to solve the problem.
And there's nothing on the part of the person receiving that money.
Right.
And I always think of this stuff as it's like an allowance. If you're my son and I give you allowance and I tell you, I'm going to be able to give you $5 a week, which isn't much these days, but whatever it is, and I say, but your job is to keep your room clean and it's to, make sure that the trash goes out once a week. Okay. If you don't do that, you don't deserve the money.
Right.
So when we're giving people money to take care of themselves, I think stuff should go along with that. And I've seen this in law enforcement. So I say
there should be some oversight.
You get arrested for public drunkenness or something like that. Well, I know where the money's going. So no, right. you're done getting your money. It's just not right that I'm giving you something and this is the way you're using it.
Well,
I feel the same way about people who are on assistance to get food assistance. I mean, I have a loyalty card at my grocery store, and I can go in there and use it and then go across to the gas station and get my reward points right away. If we got all the computers that can do that,
right,
those computers could keep track of what the people are buying. And
right.
I don't know about other areas. I know where I live. They buy chips and bunch of soda and everything, and then it irritates me then that we hear that we got to have a food program for their children. And I'm going, we're giving them money already to buy food for their children.
Yeah.
So we're double dipping on that. And then we keep going further with breakfast, lunch, after school meals, summer meals. And I'm going, these kids got it better than me, I think.
Right.
So I don't like, but the bureaucracy keeps growing bigger and bigger, and nobody who's working there wants to lose their job. So they're not about to call these people out and say.
Yeah, I think sometimes it comes to like a lot of state departments, I think, are understaffed when it comes to people. So it's like to enforce maybe something like that, you'd have to have a position that's paid that somebody's overlooking it.
Thank you. And I would not mind that agency.
Certainly. And the amount of money you would save you would benefit that.
But we go back to what you said. Both of us agree that somebody needs help. Right. We're obligated to help them.
Right. But I think the definition of help in that case also kind of matters, right? Because like helping them by giving somebody the money and the food, like that's baseline help.
Right.
The next help is what's the infrastructure we can give the people to help them further like the benefit and value of what they're getting. It's like if you knew, you can go and get the chips, or you can go and get the ingredients to make a few things that are maybe more healthier and that are, last longer.
Let's face it, we do have an obesity problem in this country.
Yeah.
And that comes from just buying that kind of processed food and stuff all the time. I wish they gave them enough money to buy fresh vegetables, but that takes prep time too.
Well, I have gripes with stuff like that too when it comes to like the things that we allow on our shelves that we list as organic that are, blatantly not allowed on the shelves in other countries because they don't meet their standards for what's considered organic.
Yeah.
And then I think, by and large, we have so much, processed foods that are being made and distributed that, there's literally almost nothing you can get that comes in a package. It's not processed and
I can't
bad for you. And that helps with like shelf life. Like that's a part of that, these preservatives and things like that are not good for us are things that also keep the food staying on the shelves longer. But if you listen to somebody who's like a subsistence farmer or somebody who's there to talk about sustainable farming, they'll tell you like, not only is, factory farming and the processed food route not the way we need to be going, it's not sustainable. And we already see the impacts it has on health.
I see that. I watch programs about it, and I find it very interesting. I just love it and go, but how do we implement that? Because we have another problem, and that problem is most families have both people working. Not like when I was growing up, it was quite a while before my mother actually got a job. She waited till all the kids were in school, and she just wanted something to do. But now when you got two people that are working plus taking care of a home, especially if you have kids.
Yeah.
You don't want to come home from work all day and sit there and have to do a meal from scratch. So, yeah, let's get the box of stuffing. I can, hot water and it goes in and stuffing and it tastes good. Obviously, we know, well, you better eat smaller portions if you don't want to get really fat. But what else do? Do you say, sorry, don't do the laundry and don't do this and don't help with homework? And so you cut corners somewhere. And I think that's the major reason why that happens. And, I could be wrong.
I think there are a lot of reasons, certainly. Yeah. I think, you look at even just what the value of housing is now and what it takes for two people to work and not really have a lot of expendable income outside of taking care of the necessities and the bills. And, if you basically can't have anything in this world anymore unless you're willing to go into debt for it, at least nothing of decent value. And okay, maybe that makes sense because it's a higher value. So you're going to have to kind of finance it. But I mean,
I find it interesting that there are so many cooking shows on TV, so people must be watching them.
Oh yeah, it's a guilty pleasure.
They're not cooking from a box. They're actually doing meals and stuff, so people are interested in it. It's just I don't have the time to do it. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that also happens. We have 40-hour. We have a full-time position. You're a salary person and you're expected to be there full time. So you're expected to be there 35 to 40 hours a week. But they say as a part of your salary, you could have to be up here up to 60 hours a week. And now, and 9 times out of 10, if that's even on the table, they plan on having you there those 60 hours a week. Because that's bang for buck right there.
I mean, that's even I want to work part-time, but I only want 3 days a week. No, it goes to 4 and then 5 and you go.
Yeah. Well, I ran into the latter where I would be, if I were employed and I were a part-time person, they would work me up to 31 hours a week because they didn't want to have to go over that 31 and push me into full-time category where they'd have to give me benefits and this, that, and the other thing.
Well, I'm in that situation now, but I'm older and I have, my retirement income to add to it, what I do now. But they want us to do 1,000 hours a year. That's total. Right. And anything more than that, I mean, if I don't work, I don't get nothing. Yeah. There's no sick days, no holidays. You're either working or you don't get paid.
Yeah.
So
it's just such a, to me, so I started the podcast Collab or Die, and I wanted to have it be focused around really just the genuine amount of collaboration that really has to go into this world to make things happen. Nothing really happens on its own. And so if we don't sort of kind of coalesce and figure out, hey, look, we got to start collaborating a little bit more when it comes to all of this stuff, not just, the food problem is not going to get solved by just fixing one little aspect of it. There's a bunch of different spokes to that wheel that need to be addressed. And so I think until we start having, and then we end up in this position where politically, obviously, we see a country that they say is very divided, but I think that if you went to a policy level where we stopped paying attention to the politicians and we started paying attention to what common sense policy we wanted to see come into place, we'd see a larger central party of people that were looking for a lot of the same things. Yeah. And you go too far to the right or the left, and it starts to get really weird for everybody.
Yeah, the politicians and the news, it's biased. The news channels are biased. We know that.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that says they're not, I mean, you might want to watch it a little closer.
Right. And just flip between two of them.
Even though I'm a conservative and I don't necessarily, agree with the president right now, I don't like them just fighting with him all the time over everything.
Right.
Every little thing. I mean, I ride a bike, before I got sick, I rode a bicycle a lot.
Yeah.
And so here, I guess.
A lot is an understatement.
Well, I don't know. A ride for me might be, depending on how I feel, anywhere from 15 to 25 miles, right, which people thought was a lot, but I had years when I was a little younger that I could do more than that.
Right.
But that was my exercise. That's what kept me thin, and I enjoyed doing it. But I understood it too. It's you wear that spandex, and everybody says, "Oh my God, you must be gay." No, you don't understand. Those seats hurt, and there's padding in there.
Right.
And so and it keeps my muscles tight too. If you look, some football players a long time ago, they were trying to figure out how to do it. They started using women's girdles.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they didn't, blow out muscles and stuff in their legs. So, so that's what it came from. I mean, now they wear compression shorts and stuff like that. So, and so that's a lot of sports arts have specific things that they wear. So that one was never much, but the whole bicycle thing, though, where were we going with this? How come I keep forgetting where we're going?
That's that cancer brain again.
It could be. Oh, by the way, it's not my brain. I have a tumor in the back of my head, but my skull is so thick, they checked, and it couldn't get in, which I'm happy about that.
You're like, see, and everybody was giving me shit for it for so long, but it is the thing that is keeping me here.
So where were we going on the bicycle?
Just sort of like how we got to have like these systems in place where things can start to be like collaborating. You were looking at like the...
Oh, no, we were talking about the president and people, that the news media ragging on the conservatives, ragging on him for every little thing.
Right.
Well, he was riding a bike one day and he came to a stop and he almost, he fell over.
Right, and they latched on
and
that.
I went, and even though that was the time where I went, no, stop that. I ride a bike all the time. I know that if I don't tuck my shoelaces in, I have had this happen. They get caught in the pedal. They spin, and your foot's stuck.
Yeah, you're there.
Done.
Well, I think in his case, I'm not sure if this is true, so I can't verify right now, but I'm pretty sure he had one of those like shoes that had that little lock mechanism that hooked into the pedal.
I've used them, and
those can do the same thing.
I had to stop because sometimes I felt like when I came to stop, I wasn't going to get my foot out.
Right.
And I'm going to fall over.
Yeah.
Now I use a strap. That's the old days. They had the toe clips, so you could pull up at the same, with one leg while you're pushing down with the other. Well, my straps do the same thing, but I can get in and out of them really easy. But I could understand him coming to a stop, and it didn't come out.
Yeah.
Boom.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Simple mistake.
And I went, that's all it is, folks. That's it.
But that was an end run for them to be like, he's slipping.
He's old and he
can't
even ride a bicycle anymore. Well, a lot of you couldn't ride a bicycle because you haven't done it since you were 12.
Right.
And you try to go, 5 miles and die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think,
and that's what I try to look at. I've heard other things from the conservative side, and I go, stop it. It's not worth it.
And it's not helping.
No. Okay, he stumbled. No, people stumble all the time. What's wrong with you guys? And here's a guy that's he could probably stumble and fall and split his skull open, and the medical team would have him up and going in about the next 10 minutes, and he'd be fine. I mean, the guy's got all kinds of people that are, going to take care of. And stop that.
Yeah, quit.
If you
worried about
the
minuscule.
Yeah, if you want to talk about policy and stuff like that, okay, let's talk about policy. But not this other stuff.
Well, that's sort of the other thing, right? Is like politicians aside and like the media side aside, that's a lot of what the big problem is like it kind of polarizes things so much that there's not a lot of that cross-aisle conversation taking place. And then we deal with, presidencies where we don't see anything of note that really matters to the bulk of people getting done in any meaningful way. And then these people are frustrated and disenfranchised, and we have these record voter turnouts because we certainly want to see some things come into place.
We want it, and I think the politicians have a lot of people fooled. I think, when the day's over, we got Democrats going to the watering hole with Republicans, and talking and doing things like that. But when they're in front of the camera,
yeah, they've got constituents they have to impress, and policies they want to uphold.
If it wasn't for that party, we'd have something great. Now, there are things I don't like about the government. I don't like these bills where they have so many riders on it.
Yeah, the addendums and things like that they tuck in on things.
I wish that the Constitution said that you can pass, 75 laws a year, but you can't have anything attached to them. They're all different. And if you can get a 75% majority in any one, that doesn't count. Because if we could get 75% of Congress to agree to pass law, it's probably good.
Right. If you've got that many people on this rowing on the same boat, that seems like it's a pretty.
So we won't count that one. So you can just, that's good enough for us. And then you work like that. But a lot of these, 600-700 pages, they don't know what's in there. They just know. They just know that so and so promised to give me, my constituency is going to get a new. They're going to get money to fix a bridge.
How do you feel about term limits?
I used to think that term limits, we've always had them because it was called an election.
Right.
And you could do that. Now I see how much money goes into, they're basically, if you got elected in the first place and then you play ball with whoever your party is and tells you need to vote for this, you're going to get more money for the next election, and you might get to stay in Congress a long time because of that. So, I worry about it getting bought. There's another one where I think maybe, if you run for election and you win it by a certain percentage, okay, that doesn't count towards your term limit because apparently people like you.
Right.
And
I could see that. That's an interesting view. I've never thought of doing it like that, but I could see that being a popular way to go.
You can do 3 terms. I would like to see the House of Representatives, that their terms are a little longer because as soon as they get in, nowadays they're running for election from the day they get in.
Yeah. So all that time you're spending doing that, you're not spending on doing your House duties.
And it bothers me that I've always thought that we go from the lowest to the highest. If I'm elected to a local municipal office, that's who I'm supposed to represent, that local municipality. If I get elected to a state office, I should be looking at what's best for the state.
Right.
Not my local jurisdiction back here where they're getting from. Because now I'm one person representing the whole state. So I want to make sure everything we do is good for the state. And then if I'm elected to a federal office, I go, what's best for everybody in the United States? Not my state, not my congressional district. What's best for everybody in the United States? But everybody seems to want to get money to my area so that, they go, oh, wonderful, he's doing this for us and that for us. And I'd rather see you do it for, the whole country or the whole state.
Just with everybody, just a lot more people in mind.
Yeah, just make it better for anybody. And then, it's so hard to reach those people too.
Yeah.
It's, if I have a local guy in the office, I can go and, go to the local meetings and stuff, and I can voice my opinion and everything. But then we get to the state level, I can send them emails, and I'll get an email back. Thank you for contacting us. We'll certainly think about this. Yeah, you probably won't. This is probably a delete.
Well, they've started resorting to that sort of tactic from like the guerrilla standpoint of people that want to see changes happen with their House representatives or whoever's in positions of power, where they're like, here's their, like, people put it up like, here's their number, call them, flood their phone lines, like make it so that they cannot ignore you if you feel strongly about this. And then you have this bombardment of and I don't disagree with it, because to some extent, if you're somebody who lives in a state where you really want to see some change and you have for whatever reason been, charged with seeing so much neglect or downtrodden sign of luck in this one, maybe particular area or something like that, where you're like, look, this needs to get addressed at a state level anyway, and it's really impacting this area. It's hard to do these in hypotheticals, but when you have that sort of that passion about wanting to see some change, it's like you feel like you're just not getting heard because you're maybe not in the majority, but you can see that people are being affected by this in a very negative way. Like you kind of get stuck in this, I don't have any other choice. If I want to see some change happen, I'm going to have to do this thing that is like maybe not as, cordial, but is going to hopefully raise enough hell to get the job done.
And I don't know. I think that's very difficult for anybody anymore to get their voice heard without a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the other reason why I think, I think term limits and lobbying has got to be addressed. Like, you can't have that number of money flowing into politics and government and expect that the output of that, once we see, where that money is really going, with enough examples of it going to the wrong way, going to the wrong place or going to the wrong person who's using it in the wrong way, it's like, this is not a sustainable system, especially not if we're trying to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
But also change is scary.
Yeah.
I wish you could do something like, okay, we're thinking about doing term limits. Let's do it on a small scale. Well, hey, hey, you know, Rhode Island, you're pretty small. Can we use you as a test, and you can tell us whether, you know, this term limit thing works, and whether, you know, we can tell from voting somebody got a 70%.
There's certainly something to be said for having the
they
evidence.
get this stat. Yeah, instead of here's all of a sudden we're going to do this the whole country.
And a new way, and who knows
right.
what the implications of that are, because we haven't tested it anywhere.
Exactly. But if you see it work on a small scale, I'm not sure there'd ever be a state that would volunteer for that.
Right, because it feels like giving up power.
But then again, the federal government could just go, we're going to give you money. And they go, okay, let's try that. Rhode Island's about to get all new roads and bridges.
Right.
so we're going to give this a try. And then, you know, we have one of the, I think the Constitution is just an amazing document myself. Yeah. It's all set up. Yes, it's old, but those guys were smart enough to say, this is not how the world is going to be forever. So they put a system in that they can change it. But it isn't.
What did Benjamin Franklin say when he walked out? They were like, what do we have? And he said, a republic if we can keep it.
Right. And, you know, so we have the ability to do things like do term limits in the Constitution.
Right.
But I don't want to see it done outside. I don't hate the courts, but sometimes I hate how people look at the courts, because those people are up there and they're looking at this stuff from a legal standpoint. And when new information comes along, it's time to revisit things and then make decisions based on the best knowledge you have. And I think they try. We know they get appointed, but they're appointed not. I don't think Supreme Court justices get appointed because they're going to necessarily side with what their party is. I just think that the presidents look for somebody whose their training leans to what that either a liberal side of looking at the law or a conservative side. So. Yeah. And right now we have mostly a conservative side, and that's how they're going to probably look at things. But I hope each one of them, I hope each one of them are using their best legal minds to make these decisions. And then we need to accept them. We don't, and recently we've run down, if you don't get the decision you want to get rid of the court. Well, I don't want to get rid of the court. I never want to see that. But sometimes there are things that I go, the court shouldn't even look at, you know.
Right. Or
leave it alone. And they do. There's things that they reject.
You're right.
They'll come up and they'll say, no, we're sorry, we're not going to look at that one.
I think regardless of whether it's leaning one direction or the other in terms of like conservative or liberal or whatever, I think there's something to be said for maybe having it at least feel like it's balanced. And it's hard because how do you do that, right? If you vote somebody in do we say like, okay, there's got to be 6 conservative and 6, you know, like you don't want that either, because
you got to have a tiebreaker in there. So, you know.
Right. Certainly. And so, there's been a lot of talk about expanding the Supreme Court. And I feel like, well, here's the thing. When you have these justices that are appointed, they're appointed for life. They're not there for a limit. They're there for a long time. Like that is not necessarily a bad system, but we can see examples of how it has benefited bad outcomes.
But again, we're a country that's supposed to have laws, and you don't always have to agree with the law. You just have to stay within the law. So if they tell me that, you know, tomorrow the government can ban assault weapons, which, you know, I would disagree with, but okay, it's the law now. I mean, somebody made a legal decision that for some reason, based on the Constitution, that no, it doesn't apply to these type of weapons.
Right.
So they got to go. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but I mean, as an example, then I'm obligated as a citizen to listen to that or be in violation of the law.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of like the truth of it. Like that's sort of the position you end up in.
But now we get people, even after decisions are made, if they don't like them, they just keep protesting and protesting and protesting. And we're going, well, that's not going to change things. You know, you're going to have to come up with something to take back to the court that says, here's our position, and the Constitution agrees with us. Well, okay, if you have something there, you do. People get to file stuff. No Supreme Court decision is ever the last thing because you can do things about it.
Right.
I mean, you can again, you can change the Constitution, or they can make Congress can start making a law that they go, okay, we're allowed to do this. It's not in violation of everything. So now here's the law of the land. So there are remedies if you don't like it, but the protesting is, come on.
Yeah, I think
come on, people.
Do we feel like we're sitting here dealing with functional government right now? I feel like we've got aspects of it, certainly, but we're also in this place where we're looking at it like, man, there's a lot of stuff that just seems like
fixed.
Yeah, it's a broken system in certain ways, and these things do need to be addressed.
Sometimes people don't want to fix.
Yeah, especially if you're in a position where it compromises your position as well. Like if you're like, okay, if I vote for this, it essentially might rid this position from existing or alter it in a way where I'm going to, personally be affected by it.
But if we looked at government like a business and had people that were, what do we have in Congress? There's a lot of attorneys and stuff like that, and I don't care. They're supposed to know how to write a law, but I want business managers going, no, we got 742 people here and we need 306. We're going to have to downsize.
Right.
And even if that means from retirement and stuff like that, we don't replace, we need to cut corners here. Because there's
some shit's got to get addressed. Like it can't continue this way.
Exactly. Because just like you and me, we can get so much credit, but we can also get enough that it collapses on us and we can't give it back.
Yeah.
We have nothing.
Right.
Well, if we keep doing program after program after program and the money's not there, when does it collapse?
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with, record inflation and all kinds of stuff right now that is kind of...
You don't want it to collapse. I mean, that's
right.
To me,
that's the thing. I think we all agree we don't want it to go away.
But they can spend their way into collapsing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of scary. It's probably, I'm probably going to be dead before they do it, but somebody's going to have to live through that. And that's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that I hate about government is how many people that have made government their God. And if the government says it, okay, it's okay.
Right.
So, and I don't like that either.
Yeah. I mean, that's everything from the politician that gets voted for to the constituents that vote for them, right? Like everybody has to kind of like dig deep and find this certain level of integrity on their own to be able to make these kind of have an impactful vote. So you can have an impactful candidate who's in theory going to be involved in an impactful government that can make some serious changes. But like you said, it's hard when we have all this money in there to kind of get the voices of people who are heard that should be heard, that are maybe coming up with the right compromises and the right decisions that could maybe help things move a little bit forward. I think we can agree, and a lot of people agree in ways that it doesn't work for them. And so I think like that's how we got to get out of this little two-party blinders kind of mentality of being like, I got to vote red or I got to vote blue. It's like there's got to be some room for some purple in there. We're going to be in deep shit in a couple of years.
I've always said if we have a war, the war is going to not be north and south or anything like that. It's going to be urban, rural. Because there's a whole different attitude in urban areas than there is in the rural areas.
Yeah, it's like there's a disconnect between the way that all these can live together and should, And
we should be able to do it. I mean, I'm a great believer that if, you would follow what Christ wants, or even your religion. If your religion is a tolerant religion, I don't care. I really don't. Because most religions try to teach you to be a good person. And part of that is just being nice to other people. And if we followed that, this would be a great world. I don't care if you're blue, green, or yellow. I mean, I'm going to treat you with respect. I might and I'll admit it, I am probably prejudiced on a lot of things, but it's a prejudice that is, it's, to me, it's more like preference. There's certain women I would never want to date because they aren't appealing. Well, am I prejudiced against that type of woman? Well, I guess I am, but is it a bad thing? I don't use it to hurt them or anything.
I think using it to hurt people is what makes it a prejudice.
So,
but I think what keeps it in the preference category is I just have this preference, and this type of person is not my.
These days, they're going to say I'm prejudiced.
Yeah, but these days they're saying a lot of things.
You're body shaming them if you wouldn't date them. Oh no, well yeah, I probably am because I really don't like that body.
Yeah, or like maybe that body is not healthy for this reason or the other reasons,
and so I think a lot of us are like that. So, but we don't do it outwardly. I don't look at some girl and go, I'd never date you because, well, you're just fat.
Well, you are I know I talk to a lot of women and people that deal with women's studies and all kinds of that nature of intellect. And there is easily room to see where there are plenty of guys that they don't care if their opinion is asked for or not. They are quick to outwardly tell you this, that, and the other thing. And I feel like we're in this time where a lot of women are just like, they're done dealing with it. They're like, I don't care what your opinion of me is.
Yeah.
And that should be the way all people are.
I can keep it to myself.
Right. But
no, I do care about what people think of me, of course. I mean, I'm just one of those people. If I'm trying to be nice to you and then you come off and tell me I'm an idiot, that makes me feel bad. And I don't want to make people feel bad, so I won't say, I won't tell them that I'm like that. I just know I am. But I respect you still.
The golden rule is treat people how you would like to be treated. Like, if you don't, and I'm a big believer in if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And sometimes if it comes into a situation where tough love is required and I have to say something that is not nice to somebody, I try to present it in a way that I can show them, like, this isn't coming from a place of hate or anything like that. This is coming from a place of like, I think you need help in addressing this. And so you need to face this because like you're not dealing with this thing, there's always these nuanced fine lines in all of these discussions that.
But like you said, getting back to religion, I think religion does a good job of trying to teach you that.
It teaches mindfulness too.
At the same time, though, I think there's a lot of people that twist things to suit what they want. I cannot figure out how anyone can believe that blowing up an abortion clinic would be something that Christ would tell you to do.
Right, or how it could be considered a victory for any side.
It isn't. And, that abortion clinic, you may not agree with the stuff or anything. Well, let's do a better job of trying to teach our youth and people about how not to get pregnant.
Right.
Not, abstinence. That's never going to happen.
Right. Have they seen human beings?
Yeah, that's the worst thing in the world. It's never worked. I'm at the risk of having everybody listening get upset with me. I am not in favor of abortions, but at the same time, I don't want to eliminate them because you can cause a lot of problems for people.
Yeah, you won't eliminate them.
No.
You'll just eliminate them occurring in any way that could be safe or effective.
Because there are situations that I understand that even, you're married, you have an affair, you get pregnant, you go, holy shit, what do I do? And, you could ruin, you might have other kids and stuff, and you can ruin that entire life for them. So my brother taught me this. I've never forgotten this. Most people try to do the best thing they can in any given situation. They think what they're doing is the best thing. So you go out, you have sex with, and it's not your spouse, and you get pregnant. You're going, what do I do?
Yeah.
I got a family here and everything. What do I do? And you try to make the best decision you can. And I think maybe if we did a better job of, trying with our children and stuff and saying, this sex is fun.
Right.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So we need to start at an age to say, but we need to teach the consequences better.
Yeah,
and then
and not
and not and say, here's what can happen.
yeah.
And I don't know how you have that open discussion and at the same time make kids feel like, yeah, here's what I need to do. I mean, I would be in favor of the government paying for the morning after pill for any girl 14 or older. Walk into a pharmacy, I say I want it, and walk back out, because you might be having sex the night before and wake up the next day and go, ooh.
I don't think there's any
I
among
forgot.
us. There are not many among us that can not recall a day where they got up the morning after and were like, what did I do?
And
that was stupid.
Right. And if you're taking that pill the next day, I don't think anybody can say you're taking a human life.
Yeah, I think when we start shifting where we acknowledge, human life begins and ends and start having that dialogue, those are more almost philosophical understandings of things. I'm of the mindset that, like, I can't have a child. So, like, I don't believe that men should have a say in that decision. I feel like that feels like something that, while we are a party to and we have some sort of an impact and influence in,
exactly,
I have a hard time thinking that I should be able to say what any woman should be able to do or not do with her body.
You got to remember, there was a man involved.
Yeah.
And in this country, the man doesn't get to make any part of that decision about an abortion.
Yeah, and I think wait a minute. The latter is a bad decision too.
Wait a minute. So, what if there's a guy who goes, but I want that child, and it's part my child? Doesn't, and the other thing is, no matter what, you're allowed to have an opinion on it.
Certainly. I think we've gotten to a point where we don't even want to hear anybody's opinion if it conflicts with what we believe ourselves.
For me, having an opinion, you've heard my opinion. I don't personally like it, but I understand why we would have it. But I want us to do a better job of trying to prevent it.
Well, see,
in the first place.
I see that you don't stop at the actual thing. You say, but how can we avoid even getting to this point?
Right.
And then it seems like there are these preemptive ways. I think it's also a matter of, like, when we teach sex health in high school, we do it maybe at the appropriate age, but I think we get it once and then we just kind of stop. But the reality is, like, sometimes repetition is the key to learning in that regard. And so, like, it being more a part of the common tongue of how we discuss or handle things, it's hard when everybody's opinions are different. But I think if we can all agree, hey, these dangers exist whether or not you like them or not.
Well, I think we could solve all our problems by making me king of the world.
Right.
I got all
the solutions.
I don't want to be elected president, because then you got to work with the legislature. If I'm a monarch, I just say it and you have to listen.
Right.
And don't have to go through anybody else. So, I can take care of all our problems, but nobody has made me king of the world yet. So
much to my chagrin. Yeah.
Oh, well. And the pay is pretty good.
Right. Pays whatever you want it to be, actually.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think, like, I'm just always so fascinated by you, because you are this, like, true conservative person, but you have such a very, like, worldly and mindful mindset when it comes to addressing things. You're very, like, I would say, humble, even though you may not say that's the word, but, like, I think you kind of, like, you understand your place in the world and what impact you can and can't have. You understand a lot of what's going on around you. And you see where there are things that could be changed and adjustments that could be made in society and yada, yada, yada. But more than that, you approach everything with the sort of an understanding and an open heart that it really kind of takes to really get through some of these tough conversations that we, like, our country as a whole is having en masse. We just get out of Thanksgiving, and I'm sure there were a lot of awkward Thanksgiving conversations after a year of Roe v. Wade being overturned and this, that, and the other thing. Like, those are real conversations that people feel entitled to have, and it's hard if you feel like they're just regurgitating the things that they've been fed. But I feel like you have an actual, not just like a formulated opinion, but one that you've really kind of carefully crafted.
Again, back to Dr. Google, I think I'm an introvert, and it says that introverts, because I'm not a social animal, social situations are just a pain for me. And they say introverts, that it takes something out of you to be around all those people. And what you want to do is get away from them. But introverts also do a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
We love to just challenge ourselves. So when I get something like, I'm thinking about abortion and I'm thinking, yeah, I don't like it, but I always get the but in there. And then I start thinking about all the buts. So I and they say that introverts just keep going and going and going about thinking about things themselves. And that's probably where I come up with this kind of stuff where I go, I'm not the only person in the world. There's a way of seeing this and going, I understand why we do this, even if I don't agree. And I don't have to agree.
Yeah, I think people feel like if they hear the opinion that they're somehow giving up what they
that's the greatest thing in the world is if they pass a law that says you can go 105 on the freeway, yeah, but I can go 25 too if I don't like 105.
Right.
I mean, there's some things that you go okay, and it makes sense to me. And there's other ones where people go, you can't do that because you're ruining my life and I have freedom to do. Pal, we put stop signs everywhere. People listen to them because they're good for us. Come on.
Right. Well, yeah.
There's some things that are good for us, people. Even if you don't agree, I got to stop at this corner. Well, don't stop. You get a ticket.
What do you feel like people don't really think about in their day-to-day as often as they should that would be more impactful to them making meaningful changes in their lives moving forward? If you're
their lives or the lives of everybody?
I think it starts with you, right? Like that's the first place you have any realm of control or autonomy is whenever you can kind of say, hey, I'm going to stop looking at this. I'm going to stop, looking at the news channel and getting irate from 7 to 8, 9 before I go to bed.
And even if you watch it, realize it's biased.
Right. I think if we could get people to see that.
Try to ignore the stuff that really, like I said, the bicycle thing with Biden. Try to ignore that when they're nitpicking. Because that's I think it's mean and it doesn't do a thing for anybody. So don't nitpick. I mean, if it's something that happens to a lot of people, it's just something that happened to him. And we've seen this on both sides. I mean, we've seen presidents stumble down the stairs coming off a plane, and all of a sudden, oh my God!
Trump had toilet paper hanging off his shoe when he was getting into Air Force one time.
Come on, stop that! Just stop it.
Yeah, nobody individually going through any one of those situations would ever want to have their ass held to the fire when it came to being. Hey, you remember that time you did? It's like somebody showing up at a party when you're with all your friends and everybody, trying to remind you of the time that you got pantsed in high school in front of everybody.
The truth is, people have said, why don't you run for something? And I can't. I said, but I know exactly what I'd say if I was and I announced. And my announcement.
Why can't you?
Well, you listen and you'll know why.
No.
Here would be my announcement. I'm running for, dog catcher. But I need to announce to everyone that I have every one of the 10 commandments I have broken. And if you go down the list, there's some pretty bad stuff in there.
Yeah.
So I have broken every one of the commandments, but I have been forgiven by Christ. And so we're done with that discussion. If you ask anything about them, I'll tell you, it doesn't matter anymore. They've been forgiven.
Yeah.
So, but if you go down the list, I'm a pretty bad person.
In terms of having broken the commandments and gone through them all.
Well, look at them. Look at what they are and then go, wait a minute, when did that happen?
Right. But I also think in positions of authority and government, I would want people with the experience and the humility kind of coinciding together. So I would be less abhorrent and upset over somebody who had broken all the commandments than I would be over the person who was not repentant for it. Didn't faze them that they did those things.
That's what I had to do. I either did it or I had in some way I was responsible for somebody else, and that's just as bad as doing it yourself.
Do you feel like that is what you think to you disqualifies you from wanting to run?
Why would you have somebody do stuff like that and then say, I want him to represent me? Come on.
I mean, don't you believe in that redemptive arc where you could do some serious good having the benefit of...
For me? Yeah, I know. I've been forgiven. And it doesn't bother me that stuff happened now.
But I think some of that probably happened in the line of duty, So
No, most of it happened in my private affairs when I was just plain stupid. You know, we all go through stupid phase.
oh yeah,
And we all, you know, the difference between me being in prison and somebody else is I wasn't caught.
okay, yeah,
And that happens to a lot of us, and we're just lucky.
but that's probably a lot of people already.
Agreed.
And I would even say there's probably some people in government that have already done that, and maybe people that do good in government.
But there are people in government that do that to go, I don't care, I did that.
Right.
I don't like those people.
Right. So I'd rather have
But you
this
know,
person.
I'm pretty much sure even if I could get elected to something, I would be the term limit guy. Because if they said, we're going to give you money to vote this way, and I'd go, no, you're not. I'm voting what I think is best, not what you want.
Right, and that's why I was voted in.
Yeah, and I'll be going because you aren't going to give me any money to get reelected.
But I think I'd rather have that. I'd take a bunch of people being in there that are voting on what their constituents want actually versus what they're being paid.
At the end of the day, I want to be comfortable with me. I've done this my whole life. I've made decisions in law enforcement that went against what the chief wanted, and I paid a price for it. But I never regretted doing it. There was a time that I made sergeant. I was a supervisor. Didn't last long.
Why? Can you say?
Yeah. One of the things that I was I've never had a supervisor in 27 years of police work that had prior military service. I did. And the military does know what they're doing. I believe it when their hierarchy and everything, the hierarchy and everything, you do things in a certain way. And the police department was all these, we're quasi-military, and here's what we're going to do. And if you have a problem, go to your sergeant, and the sergeant goes to the lieutenant if it isn't resolved, and so forth. You go up the chain of command.
Chain of command.
But I've never had any. I've always had military supervisors that went in that, you'd have your CO come in and give a speech and, okay, Mr. Commanding Officer, and we have an open door policy. If you have a problem, you can come straight to me. He'd walk out of the room and the first sergeant said, if you ever go straight to the CO, I will kick your ass. And you knew it because it was your platoon sergeant and you went and next, depending on how many non-commissioned officers you had in your unit, if that didn't satisfy you, you could bypass that one and go to the next one. You could bypass your platoon sergeant if that's who you were having a problem with. But you never went straight to the top, no matter what they said. You did it the right way. Well, unfortunately, most of ours was, in police work. My bosses were, we have an open door policy, and they did, and they'd let them skirt every other, avenue of getting a problem taken care of and go straight to the top. And I started to go, these guys don't know what they're doing.
They're just skipping the steps.
We'd do stupid things. And there was another sergeant that I had that at least he never had military experience, but he would fight with them too. I mean, we had a time when they said, okay, every officer, if they want to carry pepper spray, has to get pepper sprayed. And what for? We've seen what it does.
Right.
Why are you doing that? And they said, well, so you can get on the stand and testify that it burns and everything. I said, we don't shoot each other so we can testify that it hurts. I carried a baton for a long time because we didn't have the tools they have now. And I went, no, we don't beat each other so we can, this is stupid. Yeah. There's no state requirement for it. So why do you just want to cause pain?
Right.
And it's just dumb. I said, if you can give me a reason like what we're going to do is practice getting sprayed and then retaining our weapon so that if
here's a viable reason why we would need to do that.
But it was never that. It's just we're going to spray you in the face.
So you can get pepper spray certified.
Yeah. And the one that did happen when Taser came out, and Taser was, I think it's the most effective weapon, non-lethal weapon police have. Boy, if they could get those things deployed so they made sure every time the darts went where you needed them, that would be great. But they haven't got that technology yet.
Have you ever been tasered?
No, because they wanted us to, and they had a
It
whole.
could cause somebody like heart failure.
It had the, but you got to understand that's you might, but that's better than shooting them.
Yeah, certainly.
So yeah, that's why I say it's so effective, and it works when you taser people. Most people go, never again.
Don't want to deal with that again.
But I went to the entire training that they said we had to go through. And the other sergeant, like I said, him and I went, no, you're not tasing us. There's no reason for it. Everybody else got tasered, and we went, there's no reason for it. There's no state requirement for it. So after they said, if you don't do it, you don't carry. And I went, maybe you should rethink that. But
really, that's kind of alarming that they would just be like, well, if you're not willing to get shocked, you can't carry this.
You can't do it. You can't use this tool. So you're going to have to move from, we have what they call a force continuum, where if you're going to arrest somebody and you give them verbal commands and they listen, we're done. Then you go from that, you go to hands-on, where you might have to grab onto them and turn them around, face them away, put their cuffs on. But it's pretty minimal. You're just showing that you're under arrest.
Yeah.
And then if things go sour, then you have to use more force and more force. Well, the last one is usually, now they've changed it. I think we go to a taser a lot quicker than saying we're going to hit them with a club or something,
Right.
And so you got them down, you handcuff, and you're fine. So you're taking that tool away from me for no reason.
Right.
So if I have to move...
Or for an arbitrary one, at least.
Right. If I have to move on to a more forceful one that causes, more damage, there's a real good chance you're going to get sued.
And there's going to be...
and
more injuries.
And I told my wife, if anything happens to me because I didn't have a taser, you just sue the crap out of them.
Right. Because I wasn't allowed to carry because...
for no reason other than you didn't stand up there and go, my wiener's bigger than your wiener. So
right.
I can get tased and I can take it. No, I've seen it. I've seen the videos. It's not
it's very
fun.
clear what happens.
Yeah, I don't want that. I'm not the bad guy.
Have you ever been shot?
No.
Never been shot?
No.
Not even with like a bulletproof vest on?
No, don't want to. It hurts.
It
hurts. When I was younger, I always used to say I want two things to happen in police work. I want to get shot and I want to shoot somebody. I sort of gave up the shoot somebody thing because there's not that many situations where you really can do it in where I live. Because when I was in the military, it was pretty neat because I was in the Army and the Army went, we don't like this guy. So my entire time after MP school was at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And we ran what they called a joint service operation. So we had every branch work with us. And we used to patrol for military. We couldn't work on any military base, the way they set it up. We patrolled all of New York City, Long Island, 5 counties in New Jersey, and 3 counties in Connecticut that were all close. And we just dealt with the military. That's what we needed. But we got to interact with all those different police departments, NYPD, Port Authority, Transit Authority.
That's probably pretty wild. And those are like happening places to be.
Yes. And those guys were great. And I can remember, we'd go down the street, and there was one time we see like 2 cars, police cars up on the sidewalk, and we see a guy dragging 3 people out of a theater. One of them's dragging a girl by her hair backwards. And we went, why don't we stop?
Yeah.
So we stopped and got out. And next thing they know, I hear them calling for a signal 13. And at that time, that was officer needs assistance. And within 30 seconds, I think there were 30 cops there. And I can always remember this one guy in a van coming up there driving up, and he gets out of the car and he says, who do I hit first, Charlie? And I'm going, yeah, these guys are serious. But we just stood around. But after we were done, the cops who made the arrest and have brought these people out, and they came over and thanked us for being there. He said, we carry 38. See, people aren't afraid of us. You guys carry 45s, and they know it. They're afraid of you, and you guys just being there saved our butt.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You figure if they know you're there, it's like one more incentivized reason to like not let things get any further out of hand.
What they didn't know is our 45s weren't loaded. They wouldn't let us carry a round in the barrel ready to go. You had to carry it with just your clip in it. And, I used to think, well, what good is that? But then as I got older, I'm going, yeah, you can carry the gun when you're 18 or 19. Maybe it's good that you have to take an extra second or two to think about what you're doing.
How old were you when you were there?
I was 19, and I was there till I was like 21 or something.
So that's the good window of like when a lot of dumb decisions get made in your youth. Yeah. And especially if you've got a gun in your hands.
That was just a huge learning thing for me, because I can remember being in my room one night, and I'm like on the third floor of this building is where we had our room. And I hear gunshots, and I go over the window and I look, and I watch down across the street, maybe a block away. There's, the cops there having a shootout. And the thing was, I'd been in the city long enough, I got bored, and I went back and watched TV. When I first got there, I'm so scared of this place. And within a few months, it was like, this is such a neat place. And the only thing I didn't like is there's so much to do, but I was like, a private. So, there wasn't a lot of money to do it. So I didn't get to do all the stuff that there was available there. But the time I got to spend with the different police officers and stuff and the things they did and showed me.
Very informative, I bet.
So when I got back to my more rural area, one of the things I used to tell people is you don't know how good you have it.
Right. How important is it, do you think, that people get out of their town and actually go and explore a little bit and spend some time in other areas to see?
I wish we all did it. I grew up in the military. My dad was in the military, and my first 13 years of my life was just, living in the military, which is probably one of the greatest things in the world because it's like a gated community.
Yeah.
Because most military posts have the gate, and you're going to go in one way and out one way. And if you're not in the military, you're not getting in. And since 9/11, it's gotten even worse.
I believe it.
But the rich people grew up in gated communities, but the government gave me a great gated community. Now, the trade-off was, and I don't know why this was, we moved a lot.
Like every 2 years?
More than that.
Really?
Yeah, here it is. Here's my breakdown. When I was in college, I was only in college for like a year before I figured out I'm too stupid for this. But I'm doing a sociology class, and they went around the room. It was like the first or second time we were there, and then the professor asked, he wanted to know, how many places we lived. They got around to me, and I was the winner. I said, I can remember 19 homes. And that was when I went to college. I was, I graduated when I was 17. So college, I would have been 18.
18.
So at that point, I remembered 19 places. Now, in school, from kindergarten until I graduated high school, which would have been 13 years, I was in 13 schools. Yeah. That's how often we moved. And in a 2-year period, I was in 6 schools in 2 years. And my brothers went through the same thing, and they're older than me, so they went probably more schools just because we just moved that much. And I often wonder if I would have been in 2 things. How the heck did my dad and mom have 4 kids, move that much, and not one of them flunked in a year?
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of change. Because there's a lot of school districts that do things different.
And you got to catch up when you get to a new district. Maybe they're learning at an advanced level.
I mean, from 5th grade to 6th grade, my father went to Korea. And you weren't allowed to have family at that time. Things were not, as modern as they are now. So we moved back to Pennsylvania because that's home territory. And I can remember going and doing a math thing where I was doing division. Well, the way they showed me to do it and why gave me the right answer sometimes because I'm an idiot. But
I didn't know you lived in Hawaii at any point.
Yeah, it wasn't that long. Kind of fun, though. I didn't like the lizards, but
Oahu or
yeah,
it's a good island. I got plenty of time stomping around that place.
And I visited your mom when we went back later on. So we went back because my oldest brother, and I started visiting the places that we had lived just for something to do to see how they were. Yeah. We went from kid to adult. Now I never had so much fun in my life doing that. So Hawaii was like,
I can't wait.
Well, I'm going, I don't think I can ever do it because I was born in Austria. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, I was born in Austria. I have a brother.
Vienna, or?
I was brother born in Germany, and then my sister was born in Kansas, and that's one of the places we went back to and took pictures of the hospital so that she could see where she was born. It wasn't a hospital anymore; it was something else. But the people were so nice. They said, "Yeah, here's where maternity would have been."
That's so funny.
Just so. Oh my God, that was the best trip ever. Fort Leavenworth.
That's really important for people to do, I think.
Oh yeah, and we visited houses in Virginia that at the time I thought was really big, and it was just a tiny little thing. I'm going, how did 6 people live in here? So that was always interesting, and I found out that I was born on a military base, and from what the research I did, it could be wrong, people out there, but it was the only military base that was constructed by the Nazis. In Austria. And I went, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a part of history, certainly.
Yeah. And so we took it over after the war was over and used it for a military base. And I was born in that hospital. But
that is pretty crazy. You kind of you can timestamp when you were born to being a place that is probably pretty prominent in history, regardless of whether the scale of it is large.
Yeah, now it isn't. To me, it's like, that's really cool, but to a lot of people, they go, so who cares? But I went, yeah, but it was me. But I think we moved like 6 weeks after I was born. I think we went to Germany. I'm not sure, because sometimes, when you're little, you don't remember timelines.
Especially at the 6-month
age.
But
yeah, so, and so I've never been back. I've never had the money to go back. I would love to just go back on that military base. I even know from my birth certificate, I know that we lived off post. I have the address where the house is at. I have done Google Earth just to see. Looks like it's still there. Wouldn't that be cool to knock on the door and go, 1955, I lived here? And no, it's amazing how nice people are.
I believe it, yeah.
I found that out when my brother and I wanted to go to Fort Leavenworth because that's where one of the places we were stationed. And we were stationed off a military post. There wasn't housing when we got there. So I took the time before we went back to email the little town. And the secretary of the town started emailing me and said, yeah, here, we'll be here and stuff like that. So my brother and I, we make that part of a trip because we want to find the house we lived in.
Right.
And we wanted to go to the library because we lived through a tornado. When I was little, it's kind of neat because we had a shelter outside, and I can remember going to that shelter, and I can remember going to my mom. I'm like 5 or 6. I'm going, I gotta go to the bathroom. I gotta go to the bathroom. She said, well, you go over in the corner, and I can distinctly remember now. Peeing on a daddy long leg spider because he was walking around. I'm going, I need something to do, and and I'm going, I never really thought about the tornado. But when we went back, we went to the library and looked up the old newspapers, and there it was. So, we made copies of it and everything, went up to the staff, told them, we explained to them why we were there and everything. And most places, you pay for making copies.
Right.
And we said, we got some stuff out of here and everything. How much we have? Well, you don't know. It's nothing.
I think people like a good story. I know, that's a pretty cool journey to be on.
We took our bicycles with us so we could ride around to the different places. So, and I remember that when we first got there, we went to the municipal office. And we went in and I said, I've been emailing with this certain person. And they went, it's you. You're here. I went, yeah. Well, and we said, we'd like to go and see where. She said, okay, you're coming with me. She stopped work and took us to the library. And she was there the whole time and going, how nice is that of somebody to do that? Yeah. And then we had some questions, and she said, well, we have a guy here locally. He's like a historian. If you want, I'll give you directions to the house. So we went, done. Okay. Went over, knocked on the door. Come on in. And he told us all kinds of, we were just, I went,
stuff you never would have remembered.
No, and they were just so nice about everything. So then the next day we go to the military base because we want to find the house and the schools we were in.
Yeah.
So we find my brother's school. Mine was kindergarten, and there wasn't much there. But we're outside on our bicycles looking at it and everything. And a guy comes out. Don't know who he is. Excuse me, I'm seeing you out here. Is there a reason why you're here? And we told him why we were here. He'd been a custodian for years. He said, come on in, let's go look at the place. So he went through the whole thing with us, showing my brother the stuff. And my brother said, I remember this stage here, when I was little and we did this and that. And it was just, how amazing was this guy just to stop everything and say, come on in. So we got through on that, and we go back outside, and my brother were out front just talking to each other and everything. And he comes back out. Hey, you guys doing anything special? No, what's going on? Well, we got the 2 secretaries in there, and I told them what you guys were doing. They want to talk to you. So we went in and we talked to them, and they went, this is so cool that you would do this kind of thing. And it was,
people don't think
amazing.
about it, but I bet a lot of people would love to do that if they could.
Amazing. And then we wanted to find, when we were there, by the way, we lived behind the prison.
Okay.
The military prison, like the big, they have a new facility now, but the old one they turned into and they just have it as like a museum. But I can remember us when we were children going there to get haircuts from inmates.
Oh, really?
And I can remember the guards. You'd take your number from the guard to see, who's going to be next. But the guard also had a shotgun.
Right.
And I'm going, yeah, how many kids do that? And it was just normal.
Right.
But in the military, they tried to give somebody trades and stuff. So they had a leather shop there and everything that you could buy everything. But we went back and visited the prison. But we also found the first house we lived in on post. It wasn't there anymore, but we knew the location. The street's still there, but it was a field.
Or something. Oh, field now.
We could look. I didn't know we were that close. We were like 150 yards from the prison, and I'm going, oh man.
So you're a kid and you're smaller. Everything is significantly further away.
I don't remember even seeing it from my house when I was little. I remember other stories from that house, but I don't remember the prison. But I went, this is cool. Going back and visiting, going, yeah, we were that close. That's neat. So we want to find our house, the new one. They did a whole new development, and we were like some of the first people who got to move into this development. And so we went, I wonder where that house is. So my brother looked around. Well, they built so many more since they developed, when we were, that was like 1961 or something. So, we're going, there's so many more. We're just sort of guessing.
Right.
Well, my brother had the bright idea because he's in the military. He said, hey, let's go to this such and such office, see what we can do, if we can find anything out. So we go. And the guy that we talked to drops everything. And he goes into their room that has every construction paper for everything that post had ever done. And he found our house. And he said, here's where it probably was. And then he goes out to his huge printer and he says, you want me to print out a copy of what your house design was and everything? And we're going,
yep.
Yeah. And here we go. And I'm going, how can these guys just be that nice to drop everything for us when we just out of nowhere? And I went, this is so cool. And we had that experience most places we went. People who didn't know us at all were willing to, oh yeah, I know who lived there. And, and when, because, we found a house in where were we then? We were in, I think, Virginia. No. Yes. Just outside of one of the places we moved in before we got a place on a military post. So we were never in those things very long. But we went back and we found it. And I said, yeah, I remember this place. And then there was a store that I could remember when I was little. And my mother sent me to the store. Now, I was in 3rd grade, I think. That was one of the schools that I think we were there for 3 weeks. But anyhow, I go, so she wanted cheese. I'm trying to think if she wanted Cheez-Its. I don't know why. But I'm in 3rd grade. She gives me the money because I want to go to the store, and I was probably going to get candy, and it was only like 3 houses away. And I remember it very well. So I went in, and instead of getting cheeses, I got Cheese Whiz because I forgot what I was doing. And a jar of Cheese Whiz and took home, and I was just so, when she said, "That's not what I wanted," I felt so bad.
Yeah.
But, we remembered the store, and the store was there. And I said, "Yeah, there's a store." And this guy comes out, and we said, "Hey, can you tell us anything about this store?" He said, "Yeah, my grandfather owned it and everything." And he just, and then we asked about the house that was only 3 doors away. And he said, "Yeah, there was a baseball player, a famous baseball player used to live in that when he was a kid." And we looked it up, and he was, wow, didn't know that.
That's funny.
Yeah, and we had, Mentner on the Lake, which is right off it's Lake Erie in Cleveland.
Okay.
And we used to love the thunderstorms there. Because they were intense. You could hear, we lived across from
that lake effect thunder.
Yes, and you could hear the waves crashing and everything. And it was like, wow, this is kind of neat because it's only a lake.
Right. But it sounds like it's a roaring ocean.
It was. And it was also the time that Lake Erie was just polluted. You'd walk down there and there'd just be dead fish everywhere.
Really?
So, I know that, that kind of thing you see. And when we get back to your original question, do you think people should be over there? Yeah, when you get to experience all that different stuff, and you get to see people live differently in different places, I think you come to think that, not everything has to be my way.
Yeah.
And, I see people that, Americans especially, are just, sometimes I want to punch them because, they'll travel to another country or something and think, I have all my rights. No, I always say their house, their rules.
You're a visitor.
And you better remember that. So I remember years ago somewhere over in Asia or something, they had a kid that did something and he was sentenced to get caned. And they made a big deal out of it. You can't do this. You can't do that. I'm going, sorry.
They can't.
Their country. Their rules, and if that's the punishment for being found guilty of a crime, you're going to get caned.
Yeah.
You got to, come on, if you're in America, we're supposed to have a pretty good education system. So, think about these things.
It's hard, just traveling to Europe and other countries when I think we are loud and boisterous people sometimes, especially when we feel like we're in other countries. And I'm certainly guilty of this also. Just being in another area and you kind of feel like there is a little bit of a stigma for being an American in a foreign country.
I think it proves how privileged we are without us knowing it.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Because we don't realize we go somewhere else and we might be being that loud and boisterous, unapologetic kind of nuisance almost.
Yes, because we have that as a privilege here.
Yeah.
That, we can voice our opinion. And we can voice it loudly if we want. And in most bars at 2 a.m, they do.
Right.
I found that out.
I feel like, so in 2018, when Nick and I were over in Indonesia, we were walking, one of the days we left from our condo and we walked to the convention center. And we could have called our driver, but we were like, it's just a short walk. Let's just go walk over. And we're in a new country. We weren't able to see a whole lot of it within a week, but we was like, well, what we can, let's go see it. And I just remember, aside from Nick hating the 18-hour flight that we had to take to get over there, he was not a fan. We were walking and we were getting ready to cross this probably 4-lane highway to get to the convention, and these kids on a moped just ripped off to the side and jumped off and came over, and they wanted to take pictures with us, and they knew who we were and they were excited to see us there. And it was this really surreal experience that we had in another place. And I feel like what I loved about us being in another country in that situation was, I think it was the first time I'd ever been out of country with Nick. And we were in this place where we were definitely not just foreigners in terms of across a border, but we're not a lot of English speaking language over there. And, you feel like ambassadors. You don't feel we didn't feel like rock stars. We did because we were signing autographs and taking pictures and stuff, but we really felt like ambassadors. We're there to be, I always loved being somewhere else with Nick because I feel like we can be our friendly selves, and people grab it. Like the weird people find us.
And they'll look at you and go, these Americans are neat.
Yeah, and like
nice.
I feel like that's a good place to be. I enjoy being in that position and not upholding the stigma of being the loud, boisterous American. We do that in our own way and already so many other ways that it's nice to go over there and be like, yeah, Nick and I were just taking a walk, and we stopped and take some pictures, and we're just walking around and just being grateful to be in another place. And
I think the other thing that I thought was so neat about growing up in the military was the things I got to see. And unfortunately, some of it I didn't appreciate when we seen it. I mean, when we lived in Hawaii on military pay, we couldn't do all the things that, Hawaii has to offer because it's a tourist destination. So it's kind of expensive. So we didn't get to do it there. But I remember when we were living in, I'll add a country here, France. My parents we'd go visit a lot of cathedrals and stuff.
Yeah.
So at 6, 5 or 6, I got to be at the top of the Eiffel Tower. And I remember, and I didn't realize till probably about 5 years ago, we went to this place and we're going all through it, and it's like museum and everything. Well, I didn't realize until later on that was the summer residence of the freaking king. It was, I think, Versailles. So we're touring Versailles, and I'm going, it's just an old house with all kinds of neat stuff looking in it. And, I think I would have appreciated it more if I knew at the time what we were doing.
It's hard when you're that size and the world is so big already that you're just at a new place with a lot of ornate things.
We were close enough that we went for a weekend in Holland and got, I could see dikes. So I know what a dike looks like. And, and I did get to experience different cultures. The thing that I see now that I'm so impressed with, that makes me think that Americans are idiots, is basically you can watch CNN or anything, and they're in a foreign country, and they'll get an interview with somebody that speaks English better than me. And I go,
you're like, we need to step it up.
Yeah, because there's no way that I'm going to go to their country and speak any. I mean, we have a hard enough time trying to talk to English here.
Right.
And I go, where do they learn it? Because it's like these are third world countries and they still know how to speak English. What's wrong with us?
Yeah, the privilege is what's wrong with us. There's this thing I heard the other day, when somebody's talented, that can actually be kind of a bad thing for somebody because you can kind of rest on your laurels early if you've got a natural talent for something. But if you don't have the same appreciation for it as you do if you have to work hard for that same level of skill. Somebody who
that's why I appreciate English so well. I know it's never good at it.
Right.
I still can't do it.
But it takes seeing somebody in another capacity that they probably had to work hard to get the language down and learn it. And there's a different affinity and appreciation for that.
And apparently their education system tells them this is important.
Yeah.
It's important to speak more than one language.
Well, I wanted to thank you for taking the time today to come down and talk to me and just share your wisdom, because I feel like I always get a whole bunch of nuggets of truth and wisdom out of you whenever we sit down and we have good conversations.
Are we done?
Yeah. I didn't want to keep you too late because I know that you said after a little while in the evening you can get a little tired from the treatment and stuff.
But I'm doing pretty good. So if you have something else, you can. I love sitting down and talking to you like this because I know we probably haven't agreed with each other in a lot of things, but something, we can still talk.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people need to see.
I just enjoy that conversation. This is going to be one of my introverts where I go home and I go, that was so cool. That was fun. It was so enjoyable.
But when you sat down, you were like, there are a lot of cameras here, and there's a lot of lights.
Yeah, I've never done this before. I mean, I don't even know why you would go, let's do this. I don't really have anything to offer, but I went, I want to do this because I just enjoy talking to Johnny. It's fun.
Well, and I enjoy that you don't look at yourself as having any particularly special insight, but I think that in itself is the kind of special insight, because a lot of people don't have the humility to think that what I'm saying isn't actually that important, and you think everything you say is unimportant. But there are people. It may be to you, but I think that there's going to be somebody who listens and says wow, that's really interesting. I never thought about that. Or, hey, imagine just somebody across the world hears of the idea. They just get the first concept ever being introduced to them of going and seeing all the places they've lived and taking like a journey doing that. That could be something that if you ever thought about doing it, you're like, oh, it just seems like a cumbersome idea. But you're saying you go and do it with the right intent, and you go out there and you meet people, and it's like everybody loves a good story. And if you're there and you're there to see, you're there with your brother and you're looking at all the places you grew up and you've got questions about stories and this, that, and the other thing. Everybody likes to be a part of something like that.
Yeah, well, I hope that, those people went, that was fun today to tell them that stuff. I mean, you never asked me what's your favorite thing in the world to do, and you haven't touched on it yet. And it's to make somebody laugh every day.
Well, that was the first thing you said. You like messing with people.
Yeah, but I like them to laugh because. Yeah. And just recently, I had a girl at work, and I don't know why. I started, she'd come past our security area to get to the mailroom. And she'd walk down the hall, and I always tried to make her smile and stuff. Well, after she found out I was sick, she sent me a card at home. And she told me in the card, you probably knew that my sister had died and I'd taken it hard. And I talked to her later and said, no, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I said, you just came down the hall, and I thought, I'm going to try to make her smile. And she appreciated that I would try to be funny with her.
Yeah.
And so, and I just like that. It gives me a good feeling when I can make somebody laugh. Now, I do stupid stuff.
Right.
That isn't politically correct, and they laugh, and I always end with, is it worse that I did it or you laughed about it?
Right.
Right. Come on, let's think about this.
Yeah.
But, if I can make somebody laugh, they laugh, and hopefully they take it with the intent it was meant for, not to hurt anybody, just to make you laugh.
Yeah, we forget that. The road to hell is certainly paved with good intentions, but intent also does matter. If you're not trying to hurt somebody, you're actually just trying to make them laugh or have some discourse. People need to be able to overstep and step back and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
I think comedians might be the ones that get the whole woke culture where we know that, there's people you shouldn't offend and stuff, but there's also times that you can just joke about it.
Yeah.
We need to joke about us, and comedians right now seem to be at the forefront of that.
They're like the last bastion of true free speech, I feel like, because they're willing to say the things that are a little offensive sometimes.
Not all of them, but they're starting to go, wait a minute, I'm just trying to be funny.
Well, I think in a long enough timeline, nothing is going to be funny. Everything is funny until it happens to you. I forget who said that, but it's true. It's easy to. I think it's important to be able to laugh at the things that happen to you too.
Well, I keep telling people, what I tell you, I feel obligated to die from the cancer just so people go, okay, I was nice to him
that
while
was
he
what
was
I
alive.
expected, right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, he's dead. Yay. And 6 months from now, I'm still alive and I'm a pain in the butt. And they're going, Jesus, he wants another load of steaks, and he's hinting at him. And I try to be careful about that because people they're more than generous.
Yeah, not everybody can afford tickets to the see Wade Walters before he's dead tour,
Well, I'm hoping I'm having a prequel wake because I don't if something happens to me and I know it's going to happen, it's wasted that if I don't get to go to the wake. So I decided I'm going to do a prequel. If, they can do it in all the movies, I'm going to do my prequel where I have my wake while I'm alive. I'm going to invite the people who I have known, and they're going to come by, and I quit drinking 3 years ago completely. But I think I'm going to have a toast if I know I'm dying.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to have them come in.
Give yourself that small courtesy.
We're going to have some drinks. My children are invited because I want everybody to tell them stories for my children, because that's one of the things with this cancer. I want to set an example for my children as long as I can about it may not be good, but you keep going and you try to do your best. And I'm afraid at the end, it's going to be curled up crying, please let me die, God, and I don't want to do that, but a lot of people do. And it just may be where I go. But until that time, this is for my kids. Now, I've been extremely lucky with this because I haven't had to prove anything to them. Not a thing, because the treatment has gone so well. But like I said, this was supposed to be a cancer where I had a 7% survival rate for 5 years, and a doctor who said he thought I was going to be dead in a week. So all this afterwards, it's got to be a blessing because I'm not going through all those terrible, terrible after effects. I have a lot of side effects. I don't necessarily like them, but none of them that are so terrible that I can't deal with them.
Yeah.
They tick me off. Like, I'm so tired. It took me like, there's one day it took me 30 minutes to get dressed. It was just that difficult. But I still got dressed. I was able to do it. And I just told myself, you got to, and I hope my kids see it.
Well, I think you were definitely a shining example, whether intended or not. More often than not, I mean, all of the stories that I get out of Nick from his childhood are hilarious. I'm not around you or listening to stories about you and not having a huge smile on my face usually.
Hopefully they're not too bad.
No, they're all great.
Like I said, I did stuff that probably now I would go to, I'd youth services would take my kids to.
Right, yeah.
I mean, one of the things I did to him, which I know, and I don't know. Oh, Nick's here, by the way, people. Nick, was it you or Zane that spit on a kid on the bus?
I think that was me.
Okay.
Wow, Nicholas.
So
gross, Nick.
I didn't spit on a kid. I think he's talking about a kid on the bus was picking on our neighbor, and I just went home and said that he spit on me. The kid didn't even touch me, but the mom had to bring the kids up to the house, and I remember him and mom and I was wearing purple Grimace McDonald pajamas, and I learned you don't make shit up that day.
Well, I don't know if that was the same one. It sounds like it's a different one because when I came home from work, my wife says, your son spit on a kid. And I went, he did what? He spit on a kid. Now, in police work, that used to be stuff that people did to us. And I always said there should be a law. That should be assault because you get upset when people spit on you.
It's disgusting.
Exactly. But we were supposed to just take it as police officers. But anyhow, so I get this and I went, where is he? I sent him to his room. Okay. Now, I can't remember which one it was. I went right up, spit in his face, and said, how do you like it? He went, he started crying. That was the end of it. That was the last time he did it.
Yeah, man, there's got to be room for tough love.
But I'm sure if, children and youth heard that story, they went, wait a minute. You can't spit on a kid for spitting on somebody. Well, yes, I can. And I used to use that for all. Well, police work was good for that because remember we talked about continuum of force. I did the same thing with my kids. If I tell you to do something and you listen, well, good. We've got the problem solved. But if you don't, we're going to move the level up. Now, we didn't move it up where I never tasered them or hit them with a baton, but the punishment got progressive until we got you to comply.
Right.
Because I always think it's not my job as a parent to raise a friend. My job as a parent to raise somebody who can function properly in society.
Yeah.
And that's it. And hopefully on the way to doing that, they get to see it. And they respect it when they get older. They're never going to respect getting punished when they're little.
No. You don't have the benefit of hindsight yet to appreciate why you got in trouble.
It's like if I went to youth services now and tell them about my dad, we got whipped on a regular basis with a belt. But looking back, he always made sure it was on the butt. Because he got a lot of fat there and everything. My brothers and I agree that there was never a time where we didn't deserve it.
Right.
There were plenty of times we did deserve it and didn't get it. And I always used to say with two brothers, we used to start fighting when the sun came up. I do not know how my mother put up with us. And I believe
Extreme patience.
Yes, I think my father would walk in the door every night and look at my mother and say, "Who do I hit first?" Because he knew
somebody did something
through the whole day that somebody did something. And he had a rule: if the belt comes off, it gets used. And there were times he got the belt off because he's upset, and then he'd hear what happened, and he'd go, "Oh, okay, you don't get punished for that." So he'd smack himself. But that was the rule. And sometimes he went behind my mother's back. And I remember one time my mother thought I did something terrible. And my dad said, "Get you a room." And I told my mother, "I'll take care of this." He goes up, he takes off his belt, and he goes, "I'm going to hit the bed, and you better scream like this." So I did.
Guess what we're about to do? We're about to put on a show.
Yeah. So mom's happy. I don't have to deal with that. And what you did wasn't really that bad.
I think a lot of people might listen to that and be like, "Oh, that's terrible." But honestly,
yeah, come on. Let's solve this problem without too much.
Right.
Too much problem. That was what it was.
That's pretty funny. Like that shows the level of like compassion and care your dad had.
Yeah. And, he was a great dad. I mean,
I feel the same way. I got spanked by my dad, and I look at it now. I'm like, I don't even for 1 second think I'm not blessed to have the dad that I got.
Our relationship when we got older is I probably didn't talk to him the last 10 years he was alive because some things I saw in him that I didn't see growing up. He was very selfish, and he would use his own family, and he wouldn't care. And because I lived here, my brothers were in the military, I seen it a lot more. And he's the one he would come to and tried to guilt me into doing things, because I'm dad and you do this. But he was doing it for selfish reasons. And he did a good job because I did it. And then something happened. I said, "No more. We're done. We're done." And probably the next 10 years, he would call. And the kids were little then. And I let them decide if they wanted to visit or not. They made their decision. I never withheld the kids from them because I knew he wasn't going to hurt them.
Right.
And he wasn't going to use them like he was using the rest of the family. But then one day he called on the phone and we're talking and he goes, "I want you to forgive me." I said, "Dad, I forgave you a long time ago." And he said, "Thank you." And that was probably the end of our relationship. But he was a great dad growing up. I mean, if we needed punished, we got punished. He did things like if your mother says, "Go blow up," you better run outside and at least yell boom. He taught us that you never hit a girl, ever. And I remember my oldest brother, for some reason, when we were in France, he hit a girl. He got punished. And when you're younger and you see somebody else make a mistake and get punished, you have learned your lesson.
In advance.
Yep. I've never hit a girl. You just don't do it. Now, I will say in police work, I have tussled with women, but boy, did they want to fight. There's some women out there that know how to fight.
And they want to.
And we only knew like 2 or 3 of them, but it was always, you didn't arrest them and just, get handcuffs on them. You fought with them to get handcuffs on. And we knew it was going to happen. So I did do it to them. But
slightly different scenario in that case.
Yeah. There was never an excuse for any other time where you would hit a woman.
Do you feel like Nick and Zane will look back and be like, "We had a good dad too"? I feel like I already know that answer.
You got the wrong guy in front of the mic. I think I've done too many things wrong.
I think you're hypercritical. I think you're hard on yourself.
I feel like no. If you ask them about homework, no. Remember, I work shift work, so they basically had me a week out of a month at home. Because if I was working 3 to 11, obviously I couldn't be there.
Right.
If I was working night turn, what I would do is I'd come home in the morning, have something to eat, go to bed. Usually I was up by about 1 o'clock because you never sleep well when you're always doing shift work.
Yeah.
So I'm up at 1 o'clock, and it was my job to make dinner. So I made sure I had dinner. My wife worked till 5, and she came in the door. There's dinner on the table. And by that time, I was tired again. I go back to bed for a nap. So I didn't do homework on night turn. So the only time I did it was daylight. But when I helped them with homework, sometimes I just couldn't see why they didn't understand. And it would frustrate me to the point where Daddy would yell.
Okay,
And
all
later on, I went, that wasn't right. But also I pity people that do shift work all the time because they know it's hard on
Hell
you.
yeah.
It's damn hard. And I did it for 27 years.
My dad,
Well,
same way.
3 more years when you add the military on it. And you're dealing with that stuff, and it affects the way you think. I wish there was a different way of dealing with that. I will say one year I had enough seniority that they decided they would let everybody work a single shift based on seniority. I picked daylight, and I went, yes, this is great, But then they started, some of the younger guys complained, so we only did it 1 year, and we went right back to shift work. And I went, this sucks.
I think you raised 2 boys that are mindful enough to realize that was probably what you were going through, and I think they have more that they appreciate than they ever would have been upset
They
about.
might know it now. I know that they're really nice to cops. They are.
Oh, I know. Nick
they
and
are.
we've run into plenty in our years together.
And I go, wow, I'm so proud of you for trying to understand that, we eat donuts, we drink coffee, but it's not the only thing we do. I mean, come on, I've had incidents where, and you didn't ask me about this stuff, but I think all law enforcement people, whether you know it or not, because of the length of time they're involved, probably have PTSD.
Oh, yes, certainly. I don't even think that's remotely up for debate.
It's not that military thing, and nobody recognizes it. If you've seen, I worked, my current job, I worked security in a courthouse. And it's most of us are ex-police officers that do this. Well, in the mornings we go in, and there's nothing for us to do in the morning until the courthouse opens. So there we are from like 7 to 8, and we're sitting with the other regular maintenance people, and we're having coffee and just bullshitting. And they listened to some of our stories, and they went, "You guys are sick. You're sick." But how do you get past all the things you see,
right?
Unless
you need to process it.
Yeah, and I know there's people that go, yeah, come on. Well, I had to chalk off a baby on the road after an accident, and the baby was alive, and I'm waiting for the ambulance, but I got to do the investigation, and I got people out there from the neighborhood because it happened in the afternoon, and I got people just watching, and I'm going, damn. And later on, the baby died, and I'm going, okay, I got to deal with this, and I still got to do my investigation, got to figure out what's going on here. And then one time I was called to the school because we had our test kits for drugs, and they thought they had a kid that had some marijuana, so they would call us. So I go up to the school and I run the test, and there's the kid there, and test positive. So, and they suspend him. I went on my merry way because, I went, okay. And I go to lunch. I remember going to lunch with a guy from a neighboring department. We're sitting there, and I got a call that a woman's at home, and she heard a gunshot. She's afraid that her son might have done something. He did. He was 14. He took a shotgun and put it in the middle of his forehead because he was afraid of what his dad would do, and he killed himself over marijuana, suspended from school. And I went, I got to deal with this too. And
and nobody thinks of that. I think a lot of people...
It wasn't pleasant, and people might think that, it doesn't affect you, but that stuff does.
I don't know how they couldn't think it would affect you. I mean, it's a part of your job, and a part of your job is handling very real, visceral experiences that are not easy to swallow.
You see that time and time again, and we have to, our level... I always would say, if you think somebody went to Iraq, Afghanistan, and they deployed for 6 months, police officers deploy for 30 years. Because every day you go in, you don't know who the bad guy is or the good guy. Everybody dresses the same. They talk the same. There's just no indication that this guy is the bad guy.
Did you ever go to, therapy for, any time period before or after your service at all to, decompress and talk about all that stuff?
No.
You feel like you processed it as best you could?
I don't know. I think I did, but boy, I got a weird sense of humor too, like most law enforcement. It's really weird.
Well, you see a lot of
You know?
weird things. Like, where
Yeah.
else are you supposed to kind of encapsulate that
so
humor?
I mean, that's probably our own, and that's why you see there's a lot of police that drink. You know, I think that contributes to it. Is we're trying to self-medicate with what we do.
Right.
I think our sick humor is self-medication.
Right.
I think when, you see that guy's down, you give him an extra kick to say, ha ha, that's all self-medication. We're doing it to each other all the time. And so that's what it is. But I really think it affects us. It really does in the long run. Hopefully it doesn't affect us so bad that, that it causes us to kill ourselves. I mean, when I got cancer, my oldest brother was worried that I was going to commit suicide because he said that's what they do. He says, doctors, it seems like doctors and cops, when they get that bad news, they think that, okay, I'll just kill myself.
That's the way out.
And I told him, I said, the truth is there's been 2 times in my life that I told myself, I hate this. I want to die. And I had my guns with me when I was doing it. And my next thought was, I can't do that. I can't do it because of how it's going to affect my kids, the rest of their lives. That they would say, what could we have done?
Right.
But the thought was there. And it was a pretty strong thought at the time. But I did, for my brother's sake, I said, I'll give up my guns. So I gave, because I couldn't work when I first got diagnosed with the cancer, I called the boss and said, here, how about taking my service weapon? And then I arranged for my other son that he would get the rest of my guns. But I've never had a thought of doing that. I mean, I had 2 serious ones, but I went, I can't do it to family. How much it went,
When Nick and I have ever gone anywhere and we're in a group of like other musicians and we're all telling stories and swapping stories and stuff, and for some reason or another you'll come up and he has to say like, oh, my dad was a cop, like, but he was one of the good ones, is like the next addendum statement. And I think that it's hard for you to maybe feel like that, thinking about all the things that the actual firsthand experiences you have going through it. But I think Zane and Nick, and even just my observation of you and all the time that I've known you now, like, I've never seen you do anything out of like a purely like selfish, mean, cruel reason. Like,
I used to do stuff that people would look at me. Well, I arrested Nick.
He probably deserved it.
Well, he did. I was at home at lunch on a daylight shift. I get a call from my area for an accident. I go, and it was Nick. And Nick he turned out from an intersection. There was a car that was coming that had a turn signal on, but he had a turn signal on for somewhere else. So Nick pulled out in front, and without telling the lady anything that I was his dad, I felt, I have the integrity to investigate this accident. And I did. He was at fault. And so I wrote a citation for him. I think it was to get back for him because once he got me arrested for truancy. Well, he wasn't truant. He just didn't turn in the excuses. We gave him excuses, and then they finally went, we're not getting excuses from this kid, so I got arrested. I went, well, that's not fair, but what do you do? So, I got my revenge, and he got a citation, and some people at work went, no, you shouldn't have investigated that. I said, why not? I have the integrity to do it.
Yeah, well,
and
I think that's the thing that stands out about you. The integrity is there.
The other thing was he was driving our vehicle. So he was, now I got to deal with insurance and stuff. But, that's the way I was. I went, you may be my kid, but that doesn't make you special,
You've got a lot of integrity. So I think whenever Nick says you were one of the good cops, I think he knows of all the things you went through and had to endure, the integrity was kept at the core of who you were.
There were things I did, like I get somebody young go through a stop sign or something, and I'd stop him. And instead of giving him a citation, I said, what's your phone number? And he gave me his phone, and I said, I'm calling your parents in a half hour. You better tell them what you did, or you're going to get a citation.
But there should be more of that. I feel like that is very also a just field punishment for.
I stopped a guy one day who was with his family, and he was driving without a license, had been suspended. That's a $200 fine, and then you add on to that the cost of the citation, and they also add more time on to your suspension. So, it was a nice day. Had his kids with him, younger kids, and I told him, hey, Does your wife have a driver's license? Yeah. Okay, get her to drive. And then I said, I'm going to tell you something right now. You're either getting a citation or these kids are getting an ice cream cone today. He went, they'll get the ice cream cone.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, we're done. And, I've always been told, and I don't know who told me, it's probably the academy, there was no reason to embarrass a person in front of his family.
Yeah.
So even if you have to get him out of the car, take him away from his family, and give him all kinds of heck, he can still get back in the car and say, I told him just where the bears go to the bathroom. You let a parent have their integrity with their kids and stuff. Don't make them look small. And I remember that day, and I was just, it's summertime, got your kids with him, get them an ice cream cone. We'll be even.
He's like, sold.
Yeah, it wasn't, they were easy to convince, I remember arresting a lady because she had the wrong plates on her car. For some reason, she had like 3 sets of plates.
But she just put the wrong one on?
Well, no, she didn't put the wrong one on. I think she was trying to pull something.
Oh, okay.
But I wrote the citation, and then we got the right one, and I put it on for her. I'm going, let's get this straightened out.
Right.
It was kind of fun. I arrested a guy one day for stealing a license plate. Took him to the station, do all the paperwork, and go, something, this isn't a big deal. It really isn't. I'm getting the information because I wanted the information from the guy. I didn't care about that plate, really. But it was leverage to get what I wanted.
Yep.
So I got them all done, and I called the local magistrate who would have to come in and arraign him for theft.
Right.
And I said, I really, it's kind of late, and I really don't want to run you in here. I said, I could probably take care of this. And I told him what I wanted to do, and he went, okay. And so I got my partner, the sergeant that I said that we worked together before he was a sergeant, the one who said he thinks just about like me. I said, hey, we're going to arraign this guy. He said, what? I said, we're going to arraign him. I said, the magistrate said I can do it. So we gave him a bullcrap story and told him we were releasing him on his own recognizance and he had to show up for this next year, none of which we were allowed to do. But he didn't know it. And so, he showed up later on. There was and then we had our good story that we did something that we're not allowed to do, but it all worked out. So just a good story then.
Well, I feel like you've probably got a million of them.
Probably. Well, I never know which one are good, and then you jog my memory from this one and another one, and I go we started a bike patrol, and they let me do bike patrol with one other guy, and the best part about that is I arrested 2 people for fleeing and eluding police. They had vehicles, I had a bicycle. One of them I actually followed and caught, because they tried to park like 8 blocks away, hidden away. And I was going down the street, nice day, and there's some people on a porch. You're looking for the car that just came by at night? Yeah, they went down there. And so they went down there, and I arrested them. I went, this is cool. And another one got away, and I gave a description, and somebody, one of the other units got them within a couple minutes. Okay. So they got arrested too. But I was like, I'm a bicycle, you're a car, and I won. Ha, 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 ha.
He trotted the whole way home on that story.
Oh, yeah. So, I guess there are a lot of stories. But
well, I'm sure that they're not for a lack of you having an imagination. So like you being able to like have these things happen is probably because you were able to like think of these other outcomes it could be instead of the outcome that maybe everybody thinks should be.
Who knows at the time?
I think the ice cream cone one to the dad is awesome.
Oh yeah. Let's go back to my brother. Most people try to do the best they can in the situation they were in. Maybe that day I just didn't want the paperwork.
Oh yeah.
And I went, yeah, this is the way out of the paperwork.
Yeah, it's a very real place for everybody.
Here we go.
Right.
So, who knows why I did it, but I just felt.
Well, I'm glad you did it for as long as you did it, and I'm glad that you raised the son that you did, that I'm in the band with, and Zane too. I mean, they're good, strong-headed, strong-hearted people.
Unfortunately, sometimes it hurts them, I think.
Oh, that's everything is also a vice and a virtue in that regard.
When you're not doing what the world thinks you should do,
that
can make a world a hard place.
Yeah.
But when you're at the end of the day, when you go, I like what I did today.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully people see that.
You've definitely bestowed the power of perseverance on both of them, I think.
We'll see. I still got a lot to
It's a
deal with.
long game.
Yeah, I got a lot to deal with right now. But, I have to say, I'm just so thankful for everybody who's been so generous, who's prayed for me, who's, like I told Nick, I thank God when I have my meal now about the poor guy that's in the field picking the lettuce, because he's given me the food to nourish me, So thank you a lot. You're part of that, what I call the body of Christ, that's making this work. And so that's a big deal to me.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on today and talk, and I don't think this will be the last time we do it.
Yeah,
So.
I'm going, I could probably go for another 2 or 3 hours. Just, you come up with the next subject. Let's talk about it. And, it may be the, crap's getting piled pretty high. Maybe that's why we need to quit.
Yes, we take a break from it, decompress, and then we come back and I think of other things that I want to talk about.
And then I'm going to smile the rest of the night.
Me too. I had a really good time today.
It was great.
I love listening to you talk. I love all your stories. I love the sons you raised and brought into my world inadvertently. It's, it's a pretty intricate and magical little web that gets weaved whenever, like you and my dad would never have met otherwise. And you and my mom, for example, like whenever you went out to Hawaii, and they were living in the military barracks space in like housing out there. So, I mean, you were probably not too far off from wherever you would have been stationed when you were over there.
No, we were really close to the Navy base, so that wasn't too bad. I was going, it's pretty cool.
Well, I'm happy that we got interweaved and you became one of my good friends in life. Like, I'm really happy that you came on today. I know that you were like, when Nick texted me and was like, oh yeah, he wants to come on, but he doesn't know what you want to talk about. I was like, that's kind of the point. I just want to have some good conversation with him, because we always have good conversations together.
You might be the only liberal that comes to the prequel wake, so be prepared. A lot of conservative law enforcement.
Oh yeah, classic. Yeah. Great.
And hopefully, and I've told them about it, and they said, yeah, we can come up with stories for your kid. Because there's a lot more. Oh, I believe it. God, there was a story.
How long were you active duty?
For what, military or?
For in the police force.
I was 27 years.
Yeah, so that's 27 years worth of story.
Yeah,
I'm sure you had one every other day at least.
And there were 3 years in the military, and that was, in New York. And so there was kind of some neat stuff there. And I actually, as a practical joke, I shot another police officer. Yeah, my boss was not happy with that. He didn't talk about it for months because we played the practical joke on him. It was, he still remembers it now. He smiles now.
He didn't smile then, I guarantee
no.
Hey, if you're going to end, you should end with that story, because it is phenomenal. It's like one of my favorites.
Well, do we have time for it?
We got time for it.
So, one day, for whatever reason, my wife went to go buy strawberries or something. And she met up with the chief of the other department before she went. And I think he was off duty. And he went along. So they went and got these strawberries wherever they were or something, because we're a rural community. Probably somebody selling them. So they come back and tell me. And that night, I invited him over for my place for a couple drinks to have fun. And I came up with this great practical joke. I said, we're going to get my boss. And I'm not going to say his name because he wouldn't appreciate this. But anyhow, I said, well, we're going to get my boss. So I go into work for the next 3 days. I'm going, I don't know what's wrong with my wife. I mean, she just seems so standoffish right now and everything, and she won't talk to me, and something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. And the other guy then goes and tells him, I think I made a mistake. I had an affair with Wade's wife. So we got both of us telling him this story.
So he believes that it's happening.
Right. So he's got this story going on. He said, we went to get strawberries and this happened and that happened. He says, and I like Wade. He's my friend. He says, I don't know what to do. So we just let that sit for several days. And then finally, the guy from the other department goes and he meets up with my boss again. And I'm coming in 3 to 11. My boss was working daylight. And at the time, our station was a house, and it had an upstairs that we used as a locker room. So I get in there, and but before I got there, like I said, the guy from the other department comes down there. He goes, I got to tell him. I can't live with this anymore. He says, I got to tell him what happened and hope that everything's okay.
Your boss?
Well, no, this was the guy.
Yeah, he said he had to tell you.
He's telling my boss.
He's coming clean.
Yeah, he said he's telling my boss when he gets here, I'm going to tell him what happened because I feel so terrible about this. So,
meanwhile, your boss probably like, okay, all right, that's one way to handle this, I guess.
Oh, well, he's probably thinking he's starting to worry because the locker room is right above where we did reports and stuff, and it's an older house, so it had a heat vent between the floors. So you could hear everything that was going on in the second floor. So we go, I get in there, and he says, hey, I got to talk to you. He said, let's go upstairs. I got something I need to tell you. Okay. We go upstairs. We start to argue. He can hear it. We start pounding on lockers and stuff. And finally, I pull out a gun that we, and blanks that we use for training. Well, our training blanks are just like real guns. And I shot the SOB. You should have heard the boss scream downstairs, come running up the steps thinking, oh my God, he just killed him.
And I'm going to have to arrest him. And now I'm down 2 officers.
He got up there and we started laughing our ass off. And he said, and that's what he was so upset that we did that. But boy, that was a good one. It was just a good, well set up, thought out, practical joke. And that's the kinds of stupid stuff we did to each other. But it was like I said, it was a long time before I could talk. There's other things I did to him that he went, okay. I mean, one time we had to hire somebody, and he was one of these guys who hasn't been around that much. So he wasn't a fan of women in police work.
Okay.
And I had worked with women in the military, and they were no different than any other guy. There were guys that couldn't do the job and were idiots. Well, I had women that just didn't want to do the job, and there were other ones just fantastic. So I'd work with both. So, I didn't go, I can't work with a woman. But he just felt that you couldn't do it. So we're getting all these applications in, and he'd go check applications to see who am I going to hire. Well, I used the township secretary and told her what I was going to do. I said, I'm going to make up an application. Well, this girl had just outstanding qualities.
This girl you made up?
Yes. I mean, she'd been to school and she had her training and she did all kinds of stuff. She had a recommendation from an officer from the state police. And he looked at this and he went, and he'd tell me, we're going to have to hire a woman. I said, he said, I looked, there's just no way they're not going to hire her. And it just bugged him. And then one day we're out on a surveillance. Actually, we were doing we were the surveillance guys for a drug buy. So we're up in the woods in these houses that were hidden out and everything. And he's telling me again, he goes, we're going to have to hire a woman. And we're whispering, I got to hire a woman, and I don't want a woman because women don't belong in police work. That's crazy. How are we going to get her to work with us? I went, boss. He went, what? I said, I put the application in. Here we are in the middle of the woods, and he goes, you son of a bitch. And I went, no, you can't yell now.
We're on surveillance.
Yeah, and I went, okay, got him again. So, I mean, I had fun doing that stuff.
You're a master of practical jokes. I love the fact that you pretend fired on your other officer.
Yeah, well, that was a good one. Except for the guy, for my boss, he
probably had a brief moment where his whole life was flashing between his eyes about the mayhem and hell he was about to deal with.
What am I going to do now? So,
yeah, but you certainly have a weird sense of humor.
Not for a cop. No, honestly, not for a cop.
Well, it's a pretty weird one for everybody else who wasn't one, and I've enjoyed being party to watching all your jokes.
They may not understand us, but we most of us try to do the best we can in that, the job we're given. And people don't always agree, but then people aren't in that position and they're not in that training. It's one of the things that does bother me about law enforcement is all the people who want to judge us afterwards without knowing our training, without knowing what we are taught to do. And a lot of that has to do with officer safety, you know. And I've seen some videos where I went, these guys did exactly what I would do. With all my training and stuff. But, you know, you're a civilian. You don't see or look for what I'm looking for.
And there's an oversimplification, I think, in some regards, where people are like, you know, that's the thing that needs to be addressed. If that's what the training's telling you to do, and it's like, unless we're having robots do this, they'd have no fear for safety of their own lives. Like, what is the alternative here if you want to keep people that, one, want to do this job in the first place, because it seems like a pretty thankless job in the first place. And then two, I mean, obviously you want to weed out the bad cops, but at the end of the day, like anybody who's doing this job needs to be able to feel like they've got the ability to be safely kept alive.
I hope more and more people, and we bring it to light. We just don't go, you know, you need to retire. And if a cop's a bad cop, he's a bad cop. And the public needs to know that, and they need to know they won't let him skate.
Right.
He needs to be punished. And until we do that and we're open with that, I think we're going to have problems. But then again, I think we got people looking at things sometimes and reviewing them and going, in a perfect world, it's like, why don't they shoot the wound? Well, I'm going to tell you something, and all cops, I think, do this, is we have to decide, we may not want to kill somebody, but we have to decide, can you use lethal force? If you can't, you need to get out of the job.
Yeah.
You need to be prepared for that, and then you need to hopefully afterwards, because a lot of people, I've seen people leave the job after a shooting because it affects you. But I try to always tell myself, I'm not the one who started this situation. Right. I'm only responding to the situation. And the one thing I've always said is the public doesn't pay the police to lose. We're paid to always win, always, no matter the cost. So they've given us those things when you're going to arrest somebody. Most nights I didn't go to work going, okay, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to get in a fight with a guy to go to jail. I prefer not to get in a fight.
I can think of about a million other things to do.
They pay me to win, not for, you know, I say you're under arrest for something, and then they go, no, I'm not. Sorry, that's not how it works. So I'm gonna win. But I always have to have that in the back of my mind about weapons and anything else that may go on. And then, you know, you just say, can I use lethal force? And yeah, I can do that because I didn't start the situation. I'm only responding to it. And then we have to review it, and then boy, it's just, you know, it's easy for them to sit there and go, why didn't you wound him? Because I'm trained to stop the force that's being used against me. And it's almost instinctive to look for the largest area that you can aim at, which unfortunately for most people
is where all our vital organs are.
Is. And you know, how do you do that? And I mean, it's a stressful situation too. I have gotten tunnel vision where I was so focused on the single thing, I didn't see the things going on around me. I had 2 situations where that happened, one law enforcement and one not. The one in law enforcement was we had people making all kinds of look-alike pills in our county because the license to do it was $5. And we had people from all over the country ordering these things. All they wear was like caffeine, but, you know, they looked something different. And we had cops or police departments from all over the country calling us and going, is this stuff for real? And, yeah, it's legal for them to do it. Sorry. But we had 2 competing people doing this stuff. But one night, it was just late at night. I'm on a back road with a Canada license plate, and I'm going, this don't belong here. So I stopped to look, and I'm talking to these people, and I'm just focused so much on them. I remember from my training, I run the flashlight into the back seat, everything, and I go, no, there's no threat back there, and I'm talking to them, but I felt that I wanted backup. So I called, and I said, I need somebody else here. And the guy comes, and he looks in the back seat. He says, we got him for the caffeine pills. I went, what are you talking about? There must have been 10,000 pills back there, and I didn't see a single thing because I was so focused on just looking for a weapon or somebody else. I didn't see any of it. And then I remember to this day doing that. That, you know, I'm going, wow. I mean, who knows if there was somebody in the field behind me and they could have killed me because I wasn't focused on the big picture. It was just try to stay focused on those two people and no other threats.
Well, I'm thankful for the service you did provide.
We gotta stop this somewhere.
I know we keep you. If I let you go another hour.
I would, because like I said, this is fun. I mean, I don't even know what time it is, and I don't care.
It's 6:12.
No, wait, it can't be.
It is 6:12.
Yeah, because you said we're going to go to this till 5, and but you know, you do get to edit. That helps.
No, I don't. I'm going to keep it long for them because I like the conversation. I feel like people can listen to it when they're driving, and it's just something they can have on. They hear things that they like, and
I go, "What an idiot!"
Yeah, for sure.
Where do you find?
I'm sure they say a lot of that.
Where do you find him?
I have like,
but I want to end this by saying one thing, because I did tell you I like to tell stories and then tell you at the end that I made it all up.
Yeah.
Not one here was made up. Nothing. So there you go.
That's the thing is I believe the ones that I hear now when you can almost tell when a real Wade Walters story is taking place.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the real deal here.
And if we went on, you'd remind me of this story and that story. And yeah.
Well, I'm rooting for you always, man. I know when Nick got a hold of me and told me about everything, I started calling people I knew to see who we could do to get like other people's.
I'm good. And I just have I'm looking forward to my children, because I told them they have to pay for it when I'm done with all the chemo and I'm healthy because my skin can't take it right now. I'm having a tattoo put on of what the doctor said my expiration date was. And I'm gonna always remember it and say, this is, you know, I want to beat it. You know,
I believe that you're going to.
Even though he says that it was that freaking bad. You know? Maybe he was just wrong about it and kidding.
Entirely possible. In the realm of things that I think are impossible that I think could get done by you, this is definitely one of them.
I'm going to go with the story that I should have expired today about 3 weeks ago. So, you know.
Well, you're a resilient character, and I'm looking forward to seeing you get better. And
so am I. I am.
Just keep fighting the fight.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you texting me whenever you get a random wild inkling to do so. So please don't hesitate to keep doing that.
Well, if I could learn how to spell your first name, I'd really appreciate that.
It's just Jon.
Well, no, it's Johnny.
Oh, yeah, but it's Jonnie.
Okay. I think that's how I have you in the phone. There's so many ways to spell it.
Yeah, but this is like my favorite way.
But you're my only Johnny, so that one's easy. Any Johnny in my phone contacts, I know it's you. So.
Well, thanks for coming on. I'm looking forward to putting this bad boy out, and hopefully you'll get to listen to it and be like, I said that?
I love it. I loved it. I mean, I just love having conversations with you.
Me too. And I definitely is one of the, and like Nick used to be like, why? Like you guys don't see eye to eye on like anything. I'm like, because he just frames it in a way where it's like, I enjoy the thought provocation, and you're definitely good at doing that.
I'm not sure, but I think you're my Johnny Carson.
Okay.
Who was a great interviewer and stuff, you know, and so you get to be my Johnny Carson.
I appreciate it.
You're fantastic.
Well, thanks for coming on, Wade.
Yeah, no problem.
We're always collaborating at all times with the universe.
That is a wrap on another episode of the Collab or Die podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making this episode for you. And now it's time for our favorite part of the show, the part where I beg you to please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. Don't be that guy. Follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. I want this podcast to be wherever you are, whenever you need it, just like a reliable wingman or a comforting bowl of mac and cheese. And don't be shy. Give us a shout out on social media at Collab or Die Podcast on all the cool platforms to share your thoughts, your feedback, and your love. Until next time, Collab or Die, baby.